All right, everyone, let's get started. Welcome to the January 17th, 2019 Planning Board meeting, Town of Poughkeepsie. Please join me for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hopefully all get out before snow tonight. Quick change to the agenda items due to an applicant having to be somewhere else. So we're going to bring up Eastdale Village applicant first, and then we'll do public hearings. The Village amended architectural review for residential buildings 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 within the approved Eastdale Village site plan, 935 Dutchess Turnpike and Victory Lane, zoned MHC, McDonald Heights Center, and IH Heavy Industrial Districts, 63.62 acres and 20.11 acres, 40.76 acres, and 2.75 acres. Peak findings for type 1 action were adopted March 15th, 2018, and site plan and special use permit conditional approval were issued July 12th, 2018, as amended through December 13th, 2018. MHGC Development, LLC, and Lot 2A Victory, LLC owners.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Kane, representing MHTC, LLC, for the Eastdale project.
Giovanni Palladino, Director of Architecture for Eastdale Village Development.
So, Mr. Chairman, as you said, we're really here to request a change in architectural review for the buildings in the residential core. We've previously received approval for colors, materials for buildings 1, 11, 10, and 9. And so we had an opportunity to change, and we think it's going to be a real enhancement to the project. So I wanted to talk to you about that. I don't know if anybody's been by the site recently, and you've seen the green exterior. That's not the final color, right? Just all right. Okay, all right. Just for clarity, but we will talk about that, and I have a little handout to explain it. But I'll turn it over to Giovanni to really take you through what we're proposing here.
Okay, as Jeff has mentioned, we were actually approached. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with James Hardie at all. Hardie Siding.
Yep.
It's a cementatious lap siding. It's sort of the new product that's being used in lieu of the old wood lap siding. So they came to our office about a month ago, and they had heard about the project. So the regional vice president came to us and wanted to know why we weren't using Hardie, and they heard about the project, and they were very excited about the project, and they saw it as an opportunity to partner with us on the project if we would consider changing the facade from a vinyl and synthetic stone to an all Hardie product, including trim. And we decided that was, a great opportunity for us. They're actually going to use it as part of a national marketing campaign. And what we love about the product, first and foremost, is that it's very, very resilient, long-term, low maintenance, has tremendous opportunity for colors. It's paintable. So if after 15 or 20 years, if you get tired of the color, you can change it. So what we're proposing today is to actually come in with a Hardie, and Jeff, you might have to move these up a little bit. This is for those that aren't familiar with Hardie, but this is the product itself. This is actually showing a texture of wood. We're not doing that. We're actually proposing a smooth texture. Mm-hmm. But I've come in with a palette of. They're actually offering thousands of colors now. So what we've done is we've tried to pick a color palette that you would typically see here in the Hudson Valley, and that's this pile here. We'll hand out a little handout later just to kind of narrows down the colors a little bit. But if you've been out to the site, one of the changes that we've made is that we're introducing a Hardie Shake, which is the old split shake system, which was a lap siding up there before, but now you'll see this pattern. It actually emulates an old shake, and it's very heavy.
Yep.
So what we've done is that we originally at the entranceways there was that cultured stone product here. So talking with Hardie and their interior designers, what we've done is we've introduced 3 types of Hardie siding. One is the shake up here in the gables for an accent color. Then we have an opportunity in this upper band here to go to a very small 4-inch exposure, okay, which is typical what you would see around here. Actually, it's 5 1/4 is what you typically would see around here. But we've actually gone to a 4-inch, it just gives a little texture to this upper portion. The main bodies on the ends where the reverse gables are, we're actually gonna go to a 7 or 7 1/4 inch exposure, very tall exposure. And then here at the entryways and in the core, we're going to an alternating lap exposure, which is a historic, it's a historic pattern that you don't see a lot, but you'll see it on a lot of the old 4-square homes, which means it goes from a 7-inch exposure to a double 4-inch exposure, back to a 7-inch exposure. It's very labor intensive, but it gives the building a lot of texture, and that's how they're breaking that all up. In the buildings 11 and 10, these are the 3 colors that we're going to be using, which is their blue, Booth Bay blue. And I'm going to leave you with all these colors right in the back. So you'll have Booth Bay blue. On the shake, you'll have this light mist. Depending on the light, it could either be a light gray or a light blue. If you were to drive by it tonight, it'll look more blue than it looks. If you can see when it's up against the blue, it actually looks more blue than gray. And then the trim and this lap siding here, it's going to be this white. So the trim will always remain white, but for these buildings here, we want to alternate between these 3 colors so they're all connected to one another. So that originally we came in that all 5 buildings there would be identical. We've actually decided to make the 2 end buildings identical, like bookends, and then it'll start to transition so that the middle building itself will only be a combination of these 2 colors. And we've worked with, many of Hardy's design team and myself and the architect of record. On the larger building, we're going to pull off this palette here. We're still working through a lot of the transitional architectural details, because obviously when you go from vinyl to Hardy, a lot of things start to change, flashing, trim, because the original trim was vinyl. Everything here now is going to be Hardy. So we're working through that now, but we want to get these colors approved. It'll be probably 3 of those colors right there.
Okay. Just want to ask, is there anyone in the audience that had any comments on this project tonight? Since we're going out of order here a little bit, just wanted to check. All right. Seeing none, we'll move on. Let's go around the board for architectural review for any comments, anyone?
Just a quick question. Have you used this product previously in any of your products or your projects?
Yes.
Okay, and you've had good
Yeah.
results with
Very
the
good results.
manufacturers?
I've actually been working with Hardy personally for about 17 years. I was actually part of their R&D at one time. Had one of their largest projects that was ever done in the country. It's pretty standard outside of the Northeast right now. Recently, we used it up at Millbrook School. We've also used it at Middlebury College recently. And we have a retail project up in Ulster that we used it on. So it's a great product.
Okay, thank you.
And it's much less maintenance than vinyl. From
It's
what
much more
from what I
stable.
understand. Stable, so.
Yep. It doesn't fade like vinyl would over time, depending on the color. Vinyl colors, if they're reds or any dark browns, over time the patina is not really a patina. It actually, the red will become pink.
Yeah, the sun.
And that's some of
gets
the
to it.
drawbacks with vinyl. The color is guaranteed for about 25 years. And then after that, it's very easy to paint.
Anyone else have?
Mr. Palladino, I know I've told you this before,
Yep,
but you have done a terrific job.
thank you.
You know, you have these potentially monolithic structures that you have cleverly transformed into something that's, the roof lines, the materials that you're using, you've transformed them into something that's inviting. So congratulations.
Thank you. We want to actually build on that success now and actually bring the materials and elevate the materials to the architectural style. And I think this is really going to make a dramatic difference in the project.
Yeah, you have shrunk the building.
First three.
Right.
Some additional. Yeah. Okay, for the new building. Thank you. All right, anyone else have any further comments on? I move we accept architecture as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded, a call to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. We get 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Before you go, though, I did want to question, how's it going out there with the construction? We had some concerns last time about the noise and the pump that was going continuously. Is that pump still happening, or?
No, the pump has been, we were able to replace the diesel pump with an electric pump, which significantly cut the noise down. That enables us to get ahead of the groundwater enough to get that manhole in place. So we were able to solve the issue. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for going the more quieter route there.
Sure.
Are you guys still working on Sundays?
I don't think right now they are, but there may be times when they will. We don't. The message was, hey, look, if we have to work on Sundays, sometimes you got to work on Sundays, but don't do something like shingle the roof on a Sunday, because that's a real noisy operation. So there's work on Sunday and there's loud work on Sunday, and so we've again having a continual conversation and to try to make sure that we're in control of items like that. So.
Thank you.
All right, great. That's, nothing early morning.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, thanks and good luck.
Thank you. Do you want these boards in addition to the colors, or you just want the color boards? Is that?
I mean, if those are the colors you're using, I
Those
think
are the
that'll be
colors. These are
sufficient.
just-
I think that's fine, yeah.
And they're the smooth versus the,
You want these? You have.
Okay, next up on the agenda is Hudson Heritage, a review of conformance and secret findings for a proposed modified development master plan for a total of 750 residential units, 350,000 square foot new commercial space, and adaptive reuse of the administrative building, main wing, 80,000 square feet, and 5 other structures. Site plan and aquatic resource permit hearing for Phase 1 development consisting of 134 residential units in 4 buildings with 297 parking spaces, and a total of 193,300 square foot commercial space in 15 buildings, 176 parking spaces, related streets and utility infrastructure, and preliminary major subdivision hearing for a total of 13 lots on the site and roads to be dedicated to the town. 3532 North Road, US Route 9, zoned HRDD, Historic Revitalization Development District, 156.19 acres. Seeker negative declaration for a type 1 action was issued December 6, 2017 by the town board. And EFG DRA Heritage LLC is the owner. Welcome tonight.
Good evening. Kyle Ahern with the Chazen Companies, here representing Sabre.
Okay.
Just to give a quick summary, I know the board's familiar with the project, and honestly, a lot of members of the public probably are as well, considering the history of this project. But for anyone in the public who's not familiar, Hudson Heritage is a project at the former Hudson Valley Psychiatric Center. It's approximately 160 acres. The plan, the approved development master plan was approved by the town board in late 2017. Since that time, there's been some, the applicant has developed a slightly revised development master plan based on feedback from the town as well as tenant needs as they, bring the tenants on board, get people interested in the project, and as we move forward to construction. The planning board at the last meeting made the opinion that we were consistent with that development master plan. No formal action was taken because if there's any changes to the plan during site plan review, that would also need to be determined if it's continues to be consistent with that development master plan.
Right.
So at that time, we were directed, and the town's consultants and town departments were given the guidance to go ahead and start site plan review. So we submitted our site plans at the end of last month, December 24th. We've received comments on those plans that are related to site plan review. So we will be resubmitting to the town, looks like at the February deadline, based on any comments we get tonight, any feedback from the public, and any other discussions that we have. There have not been any substantial revisions since that time. Well, between December's planning board meeting and the December submission, or since then. But that was the first time we got site plan specific comments. So we'd like to discuss those. We would also like to discuss the architectural design guidelines that will be prepared for the project. Mark Schulman is here to discuss those with you guys. And other than that, we'd like to hear from the public if there are any comments that you have. Oh, and one more thing to note. The structural follow-up inspection was done yesterday. We don't have the report yet, but essentially, long story short, there's been no change in the structure since the first inspection that was performed. But
We'll get a
report
copy
will
of
be
the
submitted
report.
to you. Exactly,
Right,
yep.
okay.
Are you referring to the administration building?
Yes. So, that's all from me. Do you want to hear from Mark before opening the public hearing, or?
As far as the architecture,
Yes.
let's do that and see
Okay.
see how we.
Last time I didn't have any luck with this laptop. Hopefully I'll have some better luck this time.
Good evening, folks. My name is Mark Schulman. I'm a partner with Design Development, and we are working with the client on developing the design for the project. And we're not presenting a solution yet, but we're going to, what I want to do is just kind of enlighten you to sort of the challenges that we have ahead of us in developing those guidelines. And we're certainly welcoming feedback on that. So, let's see, where's that? Where are these? So, while Kyle gets this loaded up, essentially, we heard comments a while back, and with the initial sort of architectural design that was presented, the initial feedback was that, hey, we don't want a project that looks like it belongs in California or Arizona or Florida dropped into Poughkeepsie. And I think everybody heard that loud and clear, and certainly we respect that. I certainly do. So it's important that in some way, shape, or form, this project tie into Poughkeepsie and the history you have here in the heritage. So we went, let's be presented shortly. So we did, obviously, Hudson Valley, you've got 400 years of architectural history in the Hudson Valley and in Poughkeepsie. So there are lots of historic buildings that we could defer to and look at for design cues, but it's almost too much. It's almost too much history. So the question is, where do you hone in on that? And obviously with the Kirkbride building and what's currently on site, it only makes sense that we would tie that in. So that Richardsonian Romanesque architecture is certainly a good starting point in terms of how we tie and how we tie what we're proposing to do into some of the architecture that's currently already on site.
Sounds good. I know you're looking at the layout generally, modeling after I see the King of Prussia Town Center on your cover here. But that's on the modern side, and it looks very nice down there.
It does.
But,
It does. Well, so
see how it fits in up here.
what I'm going to present to you are different perspectives. So I'm presenting your perspective, and I think we understand it, and it's clear. You want something that represents Poughkeepsie, Hudson Valley here, and it makes sense. And I agree with you 100%. So in this page, so this is the page that shows some of the architecture that's currently in Poughkeepsie. As I said, it's 400 years of history. What's interesting is you also get a lot of eclectic sort of styles, combined historical styles as well that would naturally come in over the years. But there are numerous things to choose from, and it's where I think we said that the Romanesque Italian style, which is in that upper left-hand corner, which is the existing Kirkbride building, certainly makes sense that's where we would start our process. So I'm going to, next page. So next page, it is 2019, maybe 2020 by the time, we really get things going here, but there's certainly an argument to be made that why should we do, old architecture doesn't necessarily represent the current times and current technology, and what everybody else wants. So I'm also presenting to you a handful of images of what we consider contemporary architecture. It's clean lines, it's a lot of glass, a lot of transparency. There's a rectilinear nature to it, certainly, with flat roofs, and there's a lightness to it, and technology has a lot to do with how far we've come with architecture in the last 400 years. So there's certainly an argument to be made that, hey, you know what? Why aren't we doing contemporary architecture in a brand new project? Let's go to the next. There's a third component here, and those are the actual tenants. So there are retailers, various tenants that the developers are trying to attract to the site. And as everybody knows, these folks spend millions of dollars establishing brands and identity and even architecture so that they as individual retail tenants stand out among the rest. So, we've done numerous retail projects, and some retailers are stronger than others, and some really good retailers, typically the very strong retailers, are quite demanding about what their buildings look like and how much signage they have, and getting their identity out is very important. This is not sitting off a highway, it's not sitting off the main road. This project is set back, so their identity is important, and I'm certainly not suggesting that this ends up being a billboard, because it never will be. But if you left it up to the tenants, they would love that. They would love to see that. They'd love to see, 20-foot high letters on the back of their buildings facing the road so that everybody knew they were there, and we're never doing that. But we still have the challenge now of how do you integrate a specific tenant and their ID into a project. So, to kind of sum it up, how do you design a collection of retail tenants who want their own identity in the 21st century while paying homage to 400 years of architectural history? It's a challenge. All right, so I'm not presenting guidelines, but things to start to think about, and I think getting some comments and feedback would be important. But I think it's important that while everybody has a perspective, we're going to find some collaborative way to get to a final solution here that satisfies everybody. Without the tenants, there is no project. So let's move on. So the other interesting thing here is that we're also not just designing one building. We're designing a collection of buildings, and what will hopefully end up being somewhat of a commercial village. It's important that these buildings tie together, but I also think it's important that we provide variety, and I think that's what makes a lot of these really successful retail projects, commercial projects, interesting. The last thing we want, is every tenant, every building looking exactly the same, everybody with 2-foot high red Helvetica channel letters, and it looks monolithic. I think that would be a disaster, and we don't want that. I think we want the buildings and the tenants to express themselves differently, but in a cohesive manner, so that it's also doesn't, it's not too much of a hodgepodge, if you will. The other thing is that there's going to be some open space. So, we typically refer to that as streetscape, and it's what those sidewalks look like, and it's what that open space looks like. And that's as critical to the pedestrian experience as the facades of these buildings. And that is a great way of being able to tie all these things together. And I think there's also an opportunity there to tie in some of the heritage of what's here. So Transparency is very critical, which means it tends to mean a lot of glass, contemporary forms, multiple uses materials, pedestrian, walkable experiences, signage. All of these things we need to address, and quite frankly, I think it can be different for all of these buildings, but tied together in a cohesive manner. So I think we are looking at a collection of buildings, and I hope we have as much. I hope we can have as much flexibility in the design of the buildings and the signage. I was recently in Ireland walking down one of these great old streets, and they have all these beautiful signs, and they're all different, and they're all hanging. They're relatively in a zone, but there's awnings and they're blade signs, and they're hung on different levels. But it just gives so much life and vitality to the street, and different colored awnings and just the colors. A mix of colors just gives real vitality to the street. So we do think it's important that be taken into consideration as we move forward with creating guidelines. And as I've said here, buildings and streetscape, they go hand in hand. And I think we have a really interesting opportunity to do things like art and really create some really wonderful passive and active elements to the open space. Passive meaning some nice places to sit and relax, and active, maybe it has more to do with maybe there's some presentation space or a playground or there could be game tables that are permanently fixed to a particular area where there are things to do. It could be an area where people gather for events, so that would be more active and would also require programming. But I think all of that's important to what we end up creating here. We have a lot of retaining walls, and I think we have some opportunities there while we're designing the architectures to make sure that sort of the landscape design is also incorporated and tied together. And here are examples. Certainly, there's the retaining walls over at Marist College, and there's Connecticut Fieldstone, and there's more sort of cultured cut stone, and also signage opportunities for some of these things as well. So that's also something that I think we should also be addressing as we move forward. And I would like to tie that into the architectural design, the design of the retaining walls as we move forward. So this next page, so this is a handful of projects we've actually worked on where they're all relatively new projects built within the last 10 years. And we have very successfully been able to incorporate some older elements into these projects. So that project in the upper left is Santana Row in San Jose, so it's Santana Row. San Jose has a very Spanish influence, and we actually went to Spain and we found fountains, and you'll see this little building here, which was a chapel that we actually took and brought back and put into the site. And the project looks like it's been there forever. We were also successful. We happened to be an interesting story. There were 200-year-old oak trees on site, and we were able to take them off-site, set them aside, and bring them back in when the project was done, and it looks like it's been there forever. So, again, part of the streetscape, but incorporating some of these older elements will make it look like this project's been there forever. The one on the upper right-hand side is Blueback Square in West Hartford, and the front portico and cupola of that building are historic. They're old. They were pulled apart, and that is a brand new project behind those two elements, but we were able to incorporate them, and they look like they've been there forever. But it is also another successful integration of older elements tied into the project. Lower left is the Boyce Thompson project, which is a 100-year-old building that was abandoned and in terrible shape, and we were able to essentially reposition it into retail and medical office, and it's a very successful project, has won some awards. So there are these are some great examples of being able to integrate building components from what was there from other projects and bringing some history in. And while there is going to be a considerable amount of demolition taking place on site, we actually have a scheduled walkthrough with folks to go in, take a look at what we can preserve, what's interesting, some interesting architectural elements, catalog these things and warehouse them. And for all the designers on the project, they'll have the ability to incorporate some of these elements into the new design. And we think that would be really cool. So, and again, another way of incorporating some of the older elements. And our last page here is, use of colors and materials, and we'll bring all that in. These colors we took actually from two different projects. There are colors from the Kirkbride building, and there's also a color palette that you see that's very dominant in the area. And I think this is pretty representative. We happen to like these colors, and this is what you see a lot in the area, and we would love to be able to use this as some of the standard colors. But I also don't think it's fair to anybody to limit them to particular colors, and that's why my understanding is that we'll be back before you with each and every one of these buildings, and you'll certainly have another opportunity to comment and look at this. But we wanted to get the process starting. We wanted to present to you some of our challenges, and certainly welcome feedback.
Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, there's a lot of buildings you have to worry about, and you got Maris right across the street, and the old Kirkbride building to deal with, but that's up up on the hill, separate from the commercial. But,
Right. Right.
All right. Well, before we go around the board with some comments, I think we want to do our public hearing, then we can get into some additional comments.
Okay.
So I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Does anyone in the audience wish to comment on this project tonight?
Not on the commercial, but on the other parts of the.
That's fine. It's fine. It's all part of the same project. So come on.
This is
So,
appropriate?
yep, come on up to the, have a seat here and state your
Thank you,
name.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Winthrop Aldrich. I'm the former town historian in the town of Red Hook, but also the former Deputy Commissioner for Historic Preservation for the state of New York, position from which I'm retired. For almost 40 years, I've been concerned about this extraordinarily important property. One of the great masterworks built by the people of the state in the 19th century, designed by Withers with landscape by Vaux and Olmsted.
Yep.
And I helped encourage the National Park Service designate a portion of the property as a National Historic Landmark. This is the highest designation, highest recognition that the federal government can give to a property for its historical and architectural significance. All of this I know you're very familiar with. And I also know how familiar you are with the devastation that's occurred there tragically in recent years. In fact, starting probably when the state abandoned the buildings a good many years ago now. I have hoped, and my office has discussed with the developers the opportunity, because it's an NHL building, to take advantage of the New York State and federal historic preservation investment tax credits. And I think they have decided that, for whatever reason, it's not something that they want to take advantage of. This I regret, but it is their property and it's their decision. They are in the business of eventually making money. They are not necessarily in the business of preserving, to the best of their ability, nationally important architecture and history. But the town of Poughkeepsie ought to be, and I know that you've tried hard to, in your planning and permitting process, to do what you can to protect and preserve that which is most significant in this property. And it really is the much more limited acreage and structures that were designated as NHLs. I'm delighted that the administration building is going to be reused. I urge the town and I urge the developers to do everything they can to preserve every aspect of the exterior of that building as it looks today. And I would hope very much they can find a way to use and reuse in an appropriate way the north wing. But again, that's their decision. I would just close by saying that the town does have one additional action that they can take, working with the developers, and that is to persuade them to give to the town a conservation easement, which would be deductible to the extent of the appraised value of the easement, on the Great West Lawn and on the exterior of the buildings that they will preserve that are NHL buildings, which is probably going to be limited to the admin tower. This would enable the people of the town of Poughkeepsie on a permanent basis to have an ownership interest in that property without any cost whatsoever to the taxpayers of the town of Poughkeepsie. I just can't emphasize too much how important it is and ought to be to your sense of well-being that you have here this great National Historic Landmark. I know the town has several other landmark buildings, but this is one that I think your descendants are going to take pride in, to the extent that that the townspeople will have a direct ownership interest in a conservation easement that will help protect the open space of the Great Lawn, designed by Olmsted and Vaux, and the look of that wonderful Withers Administration building. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, appreciate it. Unfortunately, the developer spent a lot of money and time working on trying to save those buildings over the last couple of years, but they've had so much vandalism has been the problem. And the weather gets in there as well, so we're working to preserve what we can. Anyone else wish to comment on this application tonight?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alan Strauber. I'll apologize in advance for the impromptu nature sounding of my comments. I just found out about this hearing today. I came before you folks probably 2 years or so ago and made a statement from a preservation aspect on behalf of a number of preservation organizations in the Hudson Valley, as well as individuals. At the time, I was president and chair of Calvert Vaux Preservation Alliance. We spearheaded the what preservation and restoration happened on the Hoyt House, the Point in Statsburg. And I'm presently executive director of HV Historic Preservation and Advocacy Group. I'm also on the adjunct history faculty at Marist College and at Westchester Community College. I remain deeply concerned about this site. That's why I basically ran over here. I'm concerned that the architect, the gentleman who sat here before you a few minutes ago, referred to 400 years of architecture. I mean, that puts it back into the 1600s, which I don't think is what we're concerned about. And the names of the architects and designers associated with this site haven't been mentioned yet by anyone. Frederick Clark Withers, very important 19th century architect, was the designer of the Kirkbride Center and the associated buildings. Calvert Vaux, Frederick Law Olmsted designed the grounds. Together they designed Central Park in Manhattan, Prospect Park, Fort Greene Park as well, and many others, as well as many residences throughout the Hudson Valley, Newburgh, Kingston, I could go on. My concern, and I know the concern of many other people who are preservation-minded and heritage-minded, as we are in this vicinity, are just concerned that as much integrity as possible, given the tragedies, given the fires, taking into account what's left, that what's there is respected, including the Kirkbride building, including the affiliated wing, and the grounds, what's left. I know there's a great lawn there. as much as possible. And we saw photographs of buildings in California and talk about other architecture in Poughkeepsie. That's not this. That's not this. Withers was a very distinctive designer. And of course, Vox and Olmsted, based on the examples I gave you, and there are many more. They're very important to not only the Hudson Valley, but to the United States and the history of architecture, design, landscape architecture in this country. So, of course, there are good reasons why this has National Historic Landmark designation. And really, the bottom line for me is I just want to be sure that as much as possible, given all the damage and given even the commercial requirements, that those factors are taken into account. Because that's the heritage, that's the history that I feel strongly needs to be respected here in this project. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for your comments.
Have a good evening.
We are working to preserve what we can, and the Development Master Plan wants to restore the Great Lawn to the way it was and maintain the administration building for use as a hotel or something is the current plan, so.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to comment?
So a quick comment. I'm Yvonne Lobby, resident of the town and on the Historic Preservation Commission. In regards to a submittal from the the State Historic Preservation Office that we recently received, the town recently received, I was very disheartened to get that letter and read what it said, but there is a part that is called out where they ask that the developers maintain the shell of the admin and that I'm paraphrasing, with the fire, since the fire, that they can scoop out the insides and rebuild. And I would like to ask the town if they can please try to prevent that. We've heard from the developers previously that the basement, first, second floor, and even parts of the third are still somewhat intact. Part of the character of the building is the wide hallways. That is what a Kirkbride Plan Hospital is. So if the SHPO isn't pushing for it, then the onus is on the town and the Historic Preservation Commission to try to encourage the developers to do that. There's also been, I've received questions personally because people know I'm on the Historic Preservation Commission to, if it's possible to have another round of public tours. They did them way back in 2015. I'm just throwing that out there. And with regards to Mark's presentation tonight, I am going to be on site with him and possibly John Pinna to go around and pinpoint the architectural elements that are important or unique from the areas that are already slated to be demolished for reuse. And I'd like to know where some of those materials are going to end up, if there's any way to kind of foresee potential reuse on the South Campus. And then I do like the idea of having passive and active space. I think that's something we hadn't talked about before, is having playgrounds, or I just wanted to say that's a good thing.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks, Yvonne. Anyone else?
Evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Lewison. I'm actually a town of LaGrange resident, but I grew up in the town of Poughkeepsie. I just had two thoughts that I just wanted to share with you guys, and based on the presentation that we just had. As far as the architectural review, I'm not sure, and maybe we can get some clarification on, will you be first presenting to the board like the southern like the architectural review of the southern buildings, and then waiting until those get developed?
Yeah,
and then
the
before moving
project
on
is
to the
such a large
north?
project, it's broken into phases. So phase one is going to be the commercial core down there where the
Okay.
restaurants and stores.
I guess the only thing that I want to bring up to you, which you're probably already thinking about, is that if you're going to be making decisions about how the buildings look on the southern section, you'd obviously want some sort of continuity as you move to the northern section. And when you come to the northern section, you're going to encounter all the historic buildings that are going to be kept. And so I just want to make sure that it's just kept in mind that as far as the colors and the size of the buildings and all of that, by the time you reach the northern campus, I guess, that those buildings would then complement the historic buildings that will be remaining. And then my second comment is you had mentioned that on a previous project you were able to pick up and then put back 200-year-old trees. Was that? Okay. So my only thing, and I've brought this up a couple times, is that those sycamore trees are really quite gorgeous and beautiful. And if you can't necessarily, ideally you would try to like maybe work around them to try to keep some of them to like show the history and the sense of space there, but if it's possible to actually move them, that would be interesting to just keep in mind as.
It depends how big they are, I'm sure.
They're pretty big, but
so
they're
that-
probably less than 200 years old, or maybe a little less, I don't know. Just something to keep in mind. Those trees are really create a great sense of the history. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Anyone else? Let's see, when do you think you'll be coming back in?
Well, he said February.
February? Okay.
Yeah, so we can adjourn.
Let's see, what day is that, February? 25th. I move we adjourn the public hearing to February, what's the date?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me get it.
February 21st?
21st, February.
I think it's the 21st.
21st is right.
Okay,
yeah.
thanks. We adjourn to February 20, the public hearing to February 21st, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded, call to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, thanks for the public comments. We'll move to our board comments. Let's start with, let's see, Eric, or should I go to David?
Well, just the overview is, you have the staff comments. Mostly, most of the planning review was done by Liz Axelson, but staff just supplemented that with some comments about the recent letter of resolution between New York State agencies and the applicant. And to paraphrase it, we'd like to see some of those stipulations incorporated into the planning board's approval to make them a part of the site plan approval as well. We also had a couple of comments to have the applicant, their next submittal, address some of the recreation requirements of the code. And then there were a couple of miscellaneous, we asked for a list of legal instruments and to address a couple of the permit requirements on the plans. Other than that, the planning comments are Liz, and I don't know if David wants to say anything in terms of overview or not.
Overview, now that we are digging into the weeds of site plan review, we thought that another submission is going to be coming to your board, I believe, from the applicant in February. However, what we thought would be useful to the extent that anybody is able to do it now is to use this sort of as a work session if there are any issues that you board members may have that we might as well start talking about. Time to get it out, get, sort of that checklist of, okay, what items do we need to really focus on? It'll help not only your board, not only the applicant, but I think just keeping the process moving forward. So I think tonight for the site plan review, to the extent that obviously there's some comments that you've gotten from your consultants and from staff, but I think we should open it up to any items you want to discuss. That way, sort of work through some items and keep the process moving.
Right. Thanks, David. Yes, I mean, we're moving toward the conformance with the development master plan, but the site plan is up for grabs. Any site plan comments anyone has is fair game.
Yeah, and if I may for a moment, Mr. Chairman, just for a moment, Peter Wise on behalf of the applicant. Just to second what Mr. Cooper said, this has been, I think, as you know, a very collaborative process over these last three and a half years now. And so what David is advocating is a continuation of that collaborative process, and we agree wholeheartedly that that's the way we should move forward. I will tell you for the record that we have received all of your comments. I think they're mostly dated January 14th. There's nothing in them that is shocking, surprising, or unexpected. As Kyle indicated, we have a responsive submission that we'll make in the next about week and a half or so?
That's February 25th.
Okay. And so we expect that we'll be able to respond to adequately to all those comments. And then finally, with respect to the comments on historic concerns, I just don't want to lose sight of the fact that, as I just indicated, we're three and a half years into this process, and the developer fully understands the historic significance of this site. We have been dealing with it through the seeker process and the EIS process for two and a half years. We are trying very hard to accommodate the preservation of what can be preserved and the heritage that can be saved, and match that up with a project that will be successful, because ultimately the town needs that as well. But we are respectful of it, and we will continue to work with you to try and come up with the best solution for preservation and that we can come up with.
All right, thanks for
Thank you.
saying that. All right, I'm going to move to Liz.
We are kind of involved in site plan review. We've just moved from looking at findings and development master plan. And for the first round of site plan review, I focused on the mitigation measures in the findings. And when we were reviewing the development master plan, Chazen created an appendix that lists all the mitigation measures, and also added an appendix, which is the Great Lawn Report, to the project assessment. So that's now part of the seeker review record for the planning board. So what I basically did was I started with the mitigation measures and then cited any code that was involved. I was pleased to see one of the comments that I had made had to do with coming up with an architectural sort of set of guidelines and palette. So it was nice to see the beginning of that process discussed tonight. I did have some questions about phasing, and one of the concerns that was raised, of course, we need a more detailed phasing plan because I know there will be sub-phases. And one of the concerns was that the Great Lawn and North Buffer are slated to be in Phase 2. So one suggestion would be to consider, is there a sort of a crescent or an area of the Great Lawn that could be started as part of Phase 1 with the rest of the Great Lawn coming later? I did give the board an update on how many, that this Phase 1, is primarily commercial with 134 apartments, and the major residential will be coming later. And in terms of recreation fees that we discussed, the recreation fees will be based on the number of bedrooms. I'm assuming that that number is correct. It may change, I don't know, so we'll wait to hear. And the response to comments. And there's a landscaping plan and lighting plan, but we need, of course, more details. And basically, the goal in my review was to try to take those mitigation measures and have them demonstrated on the plan, so that all the work that the town board did in their findings will end up, showing up in fact. So this is kind of the first round of site plan review. I'm hoping for a lot of response. Later in my review, I talk a lot about historical and cultural resource mitigation. I'm not going to, review them, but they're basically on my page 8 if the board is interested, and the historic involves the Great Lawn as part of that mitigation. So that's just an overview, and I look forward to the next submittal.
Thanks, Liz. Yep, you have a great list of comments here.
And if I could jump in for a second,
Start around the board.
have you guys been looking at firms that could redesign the Great Lawn, or not yet?
Not yet. The honest answer is not yet.
Because if she was saying, if you did bring a little bit of that Great Lawn into Phase 1, then
Right.
maybe you would need to get someone on board a
Right.
little sooner rather than later.
Right. And we'll look at that. I mean, there was also, I think, a comment that asked whether or not we expected that we would incidentally affect the Great Lawn for the construction of this.
Right.
And I believe the answer to that, Kyle, is that no, should be no impact on the Great Lawn for the construction of any aspect of Phase 1. So it may be possible to bring a portion of it in, but we will not be impacting it as a result of the construction.
There is a
of Phase
question, though, about, there is some road relocation on Hudson View Drive that kind of moves in that direction. And so where exactly that boundary is just something that we're going to want to talk to you about and make sure everyone understands and is on the same page.
Understood.
Yeah, I don't know if there's if there's a plan or something that existed from Olmsted that said what he did or what he planted, but.
Yeah, we have some
There's
historic figures so we can
something
show
that-
where the rerouting. Yeah.
Something a landscape architect could pick up on and work with.
There was a.
But to be very clear, we don't have a plan.
Not yet.
Of the Great Line. We actually have looked. Not, I mean, in terms of historic plan, we went to the state archives.
Okay.
And it doesn't exist, unfortunately.
Okay.
There's an extremely ancient blueprint that they don't let out because it's, crumbly, bumbly. But we got like an image of it, and it just doesn't show anything. It's a big blank space. Here's a lawn. So because we want to do that too. We said if there's an original drawing of the Great Lawn, then we try to reproduce it. But unfortunately, it doesn't exist.
Okay, thanks.
Well, if I may, there, in that Great Lawn report, it looked like there's some pretty good guidelines, so.
There's
Stu.
Pretty detailed, right, understood.
Here's a picture of what it looked like, but there's not plans.
Stu, I just was going to ask if you could grab the microphone next time, just so others listening. Right, but now we're all done, so, but next time.
All right, let's continue around the board. Do you have any further comments, Nicole?
No, not at this time.
No, not for me.
Joan, let's go with Ben. Nope. Nothing right now. Peter?
Just a reminder that this is called the Historic Revitalization Development District. And as I recall, I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but as I recall, that district, the language in that district brings with it considerable density bonus units. And part of your agreement is to more or less comply with some of the development requirements, among them being design. When I look at your contemporary architecture example here, in the lower right-hand corner, you have a building that looks like a 1960s Carroll's. Remember Carroll's Corporation? They were a pre-runner to McDonald's. That's just not going to be acceptable. And I think you're wasting your time. And, this is a very expensive development project to design and build. And I'm just trying to say, don't waste your time and money. I hate to see you do that. Reach in your pocket and come up with designs that this is tone deaf, totally. And we're having the discussion now so that you don't waste money in the future. You have to come up with a better idea. And I just don't I hate to see you waste your time and money by coming here again and again and again and are telling you this is just not going to work. At least not that example anyway. I mean, we're willing to work with you and come up with something that makes sense, but I just don't want you to waste your time and money.
Yep. Anything else? All right, I'll throw in my comments as well. I agree that the architecture has to fit in with the area. I was pleased that you said you're going to try to go through with the town historian, Yvonne, and others to catalog some of those elements and see where they could be used. Mm-hmm. And that hopefully will help tie things together. From a site plan point of view, I guess, we're looking at all these apartments down here, and just thinking about recreation, you don't see anything like a playground yet on the site plan. So I don't know if you could say anything about recreation in phase one versus, I know you're going to reuse some of the
there's
old library and stuff.
No playground
center
per se, but there's open spaces within the commercial town center. And then there's some more passive open space that will be part of the Great Lawn.
I guess, there's a lot of passive recreation with the trails and such.
Right.
But
so that's
not much active, I guess. That's what I'm thinking about.
All right, it's going to be important. And there's a comment from Eric's memo about the recreation fees. Mm-hmm. It is going to be important, particularly for the board, to identify the active recreational amenities. And I know it's early, but just I think it's worth identifying now. It's going to be important for the board to understand that because we're going to have to make a determination of the proportionate share of rec fees for the active recreation. As you may recall, the town board in its secret review determined that there's sufficient passive recreation within the development master plan, all the trails, et cetera, but not sufficient active recreation to meet the demand that's anticipated for this type of development, but then kicked it over to your board to make the final determination as to what the proportionate share for that active recreation for the fees will be. Because at the time of the development master plan, they didn't have all of the details that you're going to need to make that determination. Most importantly, the bedroom count and what type of residents are going to be in these bedrooms to know what the demand for active recreation will be. Now it's time to get that information sort of up front and center so that you can make that determination.
Yeah, it's an evolving plan as it goes
Right,
forward,
and-
and more details get filled in.
Right.
We are, and now we're to the site plan. phase.
Exactly. And in response to that comment, I fully expect that we'll submit a proposal to you, and then we'll talk about it and see where we end up.
I'm just thinking of another recent project. We had a dog park and playgrounds and community gardens, even some other things. So some amenities stuff. It's a large resident count here.
And there are anticipated to be some more amenities in the Phase 2 residential. But for the 130 apartments in Phase 1, there's been nothing for active recreation this time. I was going to request a meeting for the tree permit. I know we're not there yet, but I was hoping we could talk about rec fees as well at that time. So we can schedule it offline, but.
Right.
Yeah, feel free to set that up.
Well, as we've done in the past, we'd be happy to, just meet with you with staff, and typically Carl will join us if he's available as well, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So is it your plan to develop an active recreation program to offset the rec fees?
It's not part of the plan now, but we'll follow up with the applicant and see if that's something they're interested.
So you would rather pay the rec fees than provide those amenities?
No, I think, Mr. Finelli, I think what the town board, the guidance of the town board was that as David indicated, that there was sufficient passive recreation being provided on site, and that a recreation fee therefore should only be proportionate to our impact on active recreational resources. We haven't yet formulated a proposal as to what we think that impact is on active recreational resources in the town, but we will.
Did you discuss a formula at all with the town board?
No, as to the impact on active resources, no, not directly.
It was premature because we didn't have the data.
Yeah, there was some discussion earlier about the Great Lawn. Well, Mr. Winthrop is here. Probably nobody has greater access to those materials than he does, unless I'm mistaken. Maybe you could corner him before you boldly.
Always happy to corner people, sure.
And maybe he could, give you some guidance in that regard to some materials that might be available out there to help you.
We should keep looking.
Good thought.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any other further comments, anyone, for tonight? All right.
I move that the planning board direct town departments, town consultants, and outside agencies to continue to engage in detailed site plan and subdivision review, specifically site plan and subdivision plat review of Phase 1, and direct the applicant to respond to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, including but not limited to the following 1 through 14.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. We'll see you on February 21.
Thanks.
Before you go, though, we have it.
Oh, yes, don't go too far. More. Move right into Hudson Heritage Tree Removal Permit. For tree removal permit application review pursuant to Chapter 187 Tree Preservation for a 63.82 acre portion of the 156.19 acre site at 3532 North Road, US Route 9, Junction, with the Hudson Heritage Project. Going HRDD, Historic Revitalization Development District, negative secret declaration for type 1 action. It was issued December 6, 2017 by the town board, EFG DRA Heritage LLC owners.
Good evening. So we've received some comments since the last time we were here. The resolution for tonight essentially says that we are to resubmit with some of those conditions, revise on the plans. So I just wanted to give a quick summary to the board, a quick explanation, I should say, clarification. So there's a little bit of confusion based on the difference between woodlands and forestry that's being removed versus overall limit of tree removal. So you'll see on the plan here, there's a dashed line that goes mostly in phase 1 up into the cul-de-sac in front of the main admin building, and then also up to Paint Shop Road where the water line is proposed. So that dashed line represents the overall area of disturbance in the future for phase 1. The reason for that is that once we get into the construction period, which very well may be outside of the winter clearing limits, we will be disturbing the ground in all of those areas. But within that area, there's woodland areas that are designated for removal. So there is a question, well, why are you showing 60 acres if there's only 4 acres of woodland clearing? The reason for that is because because it's a developed site, there's a number of individual trees that are within the overall development in the south. Those are not counted as woodland areas, but they are, trees that are being removed. So there's, including the woodland areas, there's, in the ballpark of, I think it was 600 trees altogether. Some of that is within this 4 acres of woodland, and then some of that is, between, obviously not where the buildings are, where the pavement is, but between woodland areas and pavement areas. So, without identifying every single tree, all 600 of them, we showed an overall limit of where the trees are to be cleared, and also from the EIS to show consistency with the EIS, we showed the woodland areas to be removed. Besides that, we've received comments. We've discussed them with town representatives and their consultants. There's nothing in there, that we haven't, discussed with them, and so we'll be revising our plans accordingly and resubmitting, to get this moving. But if anyone had any other questions, happy to answer them.
All right, thanks. Let's see, Eric?
Sure. The board has the staff recommendation, which was updated to January 14th. The adjustment to the one you saw, the draft version that you saw, we had distributed by email. And then just there's also a resolution, which you had looked at, and the updated version, including an additional paragraph that was added just yesterday, which provided a specific text reference to the need for a SWIP in the event of tree removal, was sent to you by email the other day. Basically, it provides for, the bottom line recommendation is that the staff felt the tree application permit could be subject to an approval if the board was inclined tonight. The recommendation you have in front of you identifies some issues that you should discuss with the applicant and address. And the items of particular focus would have to do with a trigger date that was discussed for when there was concern expressed by the board at the December meeting as to how would the tree felling be accomplished with respect to ground disturbance and appearances, and then more particularly, how and when would they be cleaned up so as not to be an eyesore or to leave the site in a state of disarray. There have been some recent discussions with the applicant. I'm expecting they'll have some information on how they would like to accomplish that, which the board could then incorporate into their approval if they choose to go that way. And the other, so that would be one issue, is the trigger date. And then also, there was some, just in our comments, there's some discussion of a restoration plan rather than a restoration plan of Phase 1. The tree permit was proposed by the applicant as a standalone permit. And so dovetailing with the concern of the board about how it's going to be cleaned up in the event Phase 1 is deferred or occurs at a later date or whatever, the permit should stand alone. The cleanup should reference erosion controls or whatever measures the board would like to see to stabilize the site sufficient for the board's purposes in the absence of the Phase 1 plan, because if the Phase 1 plan proceeds, follow the Phase 1 plan. And again, the applicant, I believe, will address that. And just to clarify, item number 4, there's a typo in there. If there's a temporary delay, the staff is suggesting that site reclamation and stabilization would appear to be sufficient in such a restoration plan. It was, the way it's written, it looks like it says the restoration plan has that, and it doesn't yet.
Okay.
So that would be a condition that we would like to see. I think that covers it for now for more discussion. Did you want to add?
No, I think from the board's perspective, probably the most important thing to discuss would be the trigger date, because when we need to put it into the resolution. And I think, I'm assuming you guys are discuss it, but I think that's number one. We should make sure we understand that tonight.
Right.
Based on discussions that we've been having, you probably also want to understand the approach for stabilization of the site, so that you can understand, okay, well, what's the date? How long do we want to see this site with felled trees on it, or how long do we think it may happen? But I get the sense, because it looked like he was about to cut me off. So let me turn it over to Kyle, and then if there's anything else I think we need, I can chime in there too.
I'll just, one thing that staff and attorney had talked about yesterday was in terms of that trigger date, starting for consideration, the board members had discussed anything from 90 days to a year or something. So just as a basis for discussion, we started with thinking perhaps a consideration of an October 1st date, because at the outside, that would allow for time to evaluate and ensure that any stabilization measures were completed and sufficient before the beginning of the winter season, since it would require, that kind of is by.
Basically, grass needs to grow, and so.
So for the blank in the resolution, that would be a preliminary staff recommendation to be discussed.
That makes sense.
About 6 months.
That makes sense.
Right, and just to give some additional history to back up to the last meeting, the concern with the trigger date was essentially in the event that the Speedy's permit is not obtained next construction season, because the goal here is that we will be starting construction next year. But in the event that doesn't happen,
do you mean next year or this year?
This year, yeah, it's 2019, isn't it? I was wondering when I was going to make that mistake. I think it was 2018.
Giving somebody a heart attack over.
So, yes, this year is the goal. So we wanted to have a safeguard in case, that wasn't the case. If there was a delay for whatever reason, that, we wouldn't have felled trees laying around the site. So the trigger date is meant to safeguard that situation. October 1st, I think, does make sense. It allows time to get the site where it needs to be before the winter. And it also gives the applicant time to get their permits in line, so that it's not even, a necessary trigger date, that they would be able to then take care of it themselves anyway.
I'm sure the board's got some questions and things, but can you say in advance any of the, as David had mentioned, what is your approach to stabilization, and how are you going to go about the clearing? Is it just people, men with chainsaws, or big equipment? And
so there's
that plays into the erosion control and everything.
So because of the number of trees to be felled before the end of the winter, they will be bringing equipment in. And actually, thank you for reminding me, on the resolution, I was hoping we could make one change to number 2?
Number 2.
Number 2, if we could add And that's the trigger date.
Yep, that's also, but it
We
says.
could add removed from the site or chipped.
Right.
So we're bringing machinery in to take care of the trees. We've discussed access routes with the engineer to limit any possible disturbances. We've also, the ground's freeze is starting to set in, so that's certainly going to help us. But in the event that chipping can help ensure that there's no disturbances at all, we'd like to take advantage of that. And also the chipping that we don't need, the chips we don't need, we could take off site immediately, and then again there would be no felled trees. So it should be a win-win, I think.
Okay, thanks. And just remind everybody that it's you're clearing only in the phase 1 area, basically, plus some ancillary to
Right, for the water line.
to get the water line down
Right.
the main road there. All right, just go around the board. Start with Peter this time.
We're discussing two dates here. Are we discussing two dates? One for the removal of the felled trees and debris, and another one for restoration? Is that October date, would that be for the restoration?
It's the same date, because if it's not removed by October 1st, you restore.
So you're just
felling
gonna-
removing and restoration is hand in hand.
So if you don't chip those trees, you're just going to leave them on the ground until October?
So originally, we proposed felling them, not touching them at all. The reason for that is that that's the easiest way to guarantee that there's no disturbance. But the chipping of the trees actually could help us with any disturbances. You just cover the area with the chips, and it's
Is
stabilized.
that in the resolution?
No, that was the request I just asked to be added to
We
it.
would add that language, per ship.
So that would be an addendum. So in other words, instead of removing the trees immediately, you would chip them immediately?
Correct.
By what date?
Before the end of the clearing.
By
It would be
October?
done. It would be done as they're felled.
Okay, well, I don't think that's acceptable, because that is going to be a lot of debris on that site, much of which, I was there today, will be visible from
It'll be
the road.
trucked off site if not used to spread on any disturbed areas. So it won't be stockpiled.
Okay, so that'll be part of the resolution.
It'll be on our revised plans before signature is received.
I think what will need to happen in response to the comments of the town engineer and staff and the requirements of the resolution is that the plan is going to need to have notes or graphics addressing two conditions. Andy the engineer had asked for how the trees are going to be felled and what the pathways are going to be and what stabilization will be applied. And I think, according to the discussion, how that will happen at the time of tree felling. And then if the removal, and then the conditions for removal of the trees and/or chipping, and how that will be addressed in terms of disturbance and/or stabilization at the time of removal. If they happen at the same time, that's fine. But the plans and the notes on it, I think, would need to address both times. Does that?
All right, but if we're going to vote on it, I'd want to know what that language is specifically.
We can come up with language right now. So the change on the resolution would be, it's really just adding the date October 1st, and all felled trees shall be removed from the site or chipped.
At the time that they are felled. We're not going to wait until October 1st for you to clean up. It could be a huge mess on that site.
Oh, no.
Well, that's what the trigger date is.
Yeah, October 1.
October 1.
You start felling the trees on February 1.
Is it better to say removed or chipped and removed by October 1? Because I think that's what you're.
No, it's not. My concern is that if you start working next week, you're going to have that site covered. You could have the site covered with all these felled trees, and you will be consistent with an agreement that says it had to be done by October 1st.
Yes.
Which is 10 months from now.
Yes.
Okay, well, I mean, the applicant wants to chip them right away anyway, so I don't think they have any issue with chipping
Felled
as
and chipped.
as they are felled, felled and chipped. And then a trigger date is is not needed, we could just remove that.
Sure.
Okay. So then we would add to the plans that they are to be chipped as they're felled.
I mean, we need a backup date anyway, for the case that, say the economy crashes, something happens, that we want to make sure the site is.
For restoration,
is
okay.
restored
So we can
and
keep the
such,
trigger
but-
date, but the cleanup of the trees can be
Shorter
removed.
time period, perhaps.
So the trigger date will be associated with just restoration now.
You have on your plan, tree removal plan, you have roughly 50 amorphous amoeba-like areas. There are no meets and bounds. And I don't understand, since I'm not an engineer, how exactly do you monitor that?
Well, those areas are woodland areas, so they're just areas of trees.
Yeah, but if I go on the site and try to take one of these amoeba-like shapes, how do I identify which one that is?
The entire limit of disturbance that's shown is going to be, by our survey department, it will be staked out. There's going to be fencing around the whole area.
Each one?
Not every tree, but around the whole limit.
The other concern that I have is that when I look at the town code and the state ordinance under erosion and sediment control, there's nothing that I can find that says you can disturb more than an acre without a SWIP or a speedies permit.
So that goes back to why we're not removing stumps at this time, because we're not disturbing the ground.
But if you're using equipment to do it, how exactly what is our assurance that the ground is not going to be disturbed?
That's why the chips were introduced. So it wasn't, originally the chips weren't even discussed as an alternative to leaving the felled trees. It was actually because that's, the easiest way to ensure that you're immediately stabilizing everything. So you're not going to have any, big, many acres open.
I know. I honestly, I don't have any problem with you doing this if I didn't have to deal with the confines of regulations. And our code says.
Sorry, I didn't mean
That's
to
right.
jump in,
Our code says, under the permit application, a stormwater pollution plan shall be required, consistent with the requirements of Chapter 173, which is stormwater management. I'm having difficulty getting past that.
The plan, the plans that they've submitted and the application comply with all the requirements in the town code with respect to stormwater management, as well as tree clearing. If there is, and that's why we've put that extra language in the resolution.
And I don't know if they have the resolution in front of them right now that has that paragraph, so we might want to read that paragraph
I think that's a good
for the
idea,
record.
yeah.
Because we're saying that if there is over an acre of site disturbance, then a SWIP would be required.
Yes.
Where their own plan says total mixed hardwood forest area to be removed is 1.75 acres.
But the felling itself is not considered site disturbance under the local code or DEC guidance. It's once you start disturbing the actual ground. That's why we're talking about the difference between felling and
Right, when you
the
start
stumps.
removing the stumps, that's a ground disturbance.
If there were a situation in this plan where all the machinery that's being brought in, or however they're removing the trees, does become a 1 acre of site disturbance under your regulations, this provision in the resolution would require the preparation of a SWIP before any of that disturbance occurs. Right.
In fact, the staff comment number 8 actually kind of takes a first cut at that, because it indicates that although the stormwater permit coverage is anticipated, otherwise DEC stormwater permit coverage for the tree removal plan may be required. It's possible that if they exceed the 1 acre disturbance, then they would have to prepare a SWIP.
And who makes that determination?
That was made explicit in the additional paragraph. Which
All this work is inspected by the town, so this is not, they don't just go and do it, and we hope they do it correctly. I mean, we're going to be watching it all along.
Thank you.
So hopefully with all the machinery and everything, it's less than an acre at a time that you're working on, or?
Correct. And the contractor is indicating it would take approximately 60 days. So it is a bit of a process to move around, and we'll be ensuring that it's all stabilized as they go.
And I guess the clearing has to be done by the 31st of March.
Before the end of March, correct.
But you could do some additional chipping after that, you would think?
Yeah, I mean, the plan is to chip right away. Just the way it works, there might be a slight lag, but the chipping can be done. Regulatory-wise, it can be done after the end of March.
So you don't expect it to go too much past that?
Correct, no.
What about some of the larger trunks? Do you think you're chipping everything, or?
That's a good question. That's the indicated chipping everything, yeah.
I'm not sure how large some of the trees are up there. Somebody mentioned some large sycamores earlier.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me go to Ben, see if you have any comments. Ben? All right. Joan
I have no questions.
and Nicole?
No, not at this time.
Nothing further?
No.
I guess my only question is, you're going to do quite a bit of grading in there. Are there any trees that could be possibly saved and reused like they?
Not in this area. Well, I shouldn't say none. And this is all based on the phase one site plan. So we're not just clearing everything just in case we need to. There is specifically one area. And that's within the west buffer.
Okay.
The northern entrance of Hudson View Drive comes in right here. And there's some pockets of trees that are being saved within that area because they're outside of the commercial development.
Yeah, that's where the new road is going to come down to be opposite with the park across the street, so that's great to align those entrances, but there is that small grove of trees there. So no plans to salvage any hardwoods or firewood or anything?
No. No.
All right, assuming we've updated the resolution appropriately.
All right, so David, did you want to read that paragraph?
So,
So we'll have it.
yeah, let me see
Trigger
if
date for
this
restoration
works.
first.
So for number 2, we would say all trees shall be felled and chipped simultaneously, and all work shall occur no later than October 1st, 2019.
David?
Yep.
All trees should be chipped or removed. I mean, again, we don't want to just take away from ourselves the possibility of removing trees rather than chipping them. I mean, the goal is to chip them, but we want to be able to remove them as well.
I misunderstood what Kyle was saying. So then,
Well, to Carl's point, I think we should, in the event that some of the larger trunks can't be chipped, that they could be removed instead.
Right.
That makes sense.
okay, so
It's just we have
So it would
to,
work to say all felled trees shall be, all trees
Shall be felled.
shall be felled and removed or chipped.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that works. That works.
no later than
October.
October 1st, 2019.
all right,
And then the paragraph that was added, David, that again, I'm not sure that everyone has, because there weren't, I don't think there were copies out of the latest version, so there was that one paragraph
Do you
that
want me to read
relates
it?
to the SWIP, yes.
Yep,
please.
so it'd be adding number 4, pursuant to section 18710 of the town code. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the,
number 3 there.
I think it's number 3.
yeah, that's the, sorry, it's number 3. That's right. All tree felling and site stabilization measures shall comply with the town's erosion and sediment control regulations, chapter 97 of the town code. In the event that soil disturbance will occur, coverage under the Speedy's general permit for stormwater discharges and construction activities shall be obtained, and the proper erosion and sediment control measures approved by the town engineer shall be installed prior to work commencing. Pursuant to the town's erosion and sediment control regulations, in the event that any activities covered under this tree removal permit would result in the ground disturbance of 1 acre or more, a SWIP shall be prepared by the applicant and approved by the town engineer prior to any ground disturbance. And so the purpose of the reference to any activities covered under this tree removal is that it's both the removal, felling, stabilization, and the whole period until it's cleaned up and stabilized is covered by that requirement.
Thank you. All right, thanks, David. That'll be. So as long as you keep it under control, stay under that 1 acre of disturbance.
Fair enough.
All right, I move that we adopt the attached resolution prepared by the town council dated January 17th, 2019, to grant conditional approval for a tree removal permit.
Just as amended, just
as amended tonight.
Right.
Second.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-1. Yeah.
See you in February.
We
See you in February.
We appreciate, we want to see the project move forward, but done in a correct manner, so.
Absolutely.
Yep, thank you.
All that firewood going to waste. Right. They could, if they come in, just load up the trucks. You see them all the time on the road. I think they can do that if they want.
Up next is Raymond Avenue School Property Redevelopment.
And it's just.
As an involved agency for secret review, recommendation to the town board on zoning text amendment and site plan public hearing regarding revised application for proposed town board zoning amendment to allow a new anchor project use designation and a proposed site plan for a mixed-use project of 190 apartments and 3,200 square foot clubhouse, 19,990 square foot commercial space, 110 room hotel, open area including outdoor seating and 335 parking spaces. Proposed site redevelopment involves replacement of the existing school building with a 5-story hotel and construction of three two-story buildings of ground floor commercial and residential apartments above, 2 7-story residential buildings with the first floor garages, a clubhouse with offices and amenities, surface parking and access from Raymond Avenue and by easement from Fulton Avenue.
Yeah, there they are, so just.
That's at 25 and 31 Raymond Avenue, zoned ATC Arlington Town Center District, 6.38 acres and .438 acres respectively. It's an unlisted action with the town board as lead agency. POS Management Incorporated, contract vendee, and Arlington Grade School and Arlington Central School District owners. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Amy Bombardieri representing the project for the Chazen Companies and Jacob Reckes. The property is currently in front of the town board for a zoning text amendment. The site plan is with the planning board, first site plan review, and the public hearing was opened some time ago. It's ongoing. We are working with the DOT to address their comments that we expect to receive early next week. We have a meeting scheduled for next Friday. We're currently working with SHPO. Jacob's gone to great lengths to try and keep the existing school, and financially it's just not working out. So we've responded to SHPO on January 8th, so we expect to hear from them by the beginning of next month. We're currently working with the town consultants and staff for a full site plan review submission, And we expect to have that in on the 28th for the February planning board meeting. And we're here to discuss the renderings that were submitted to the board on December 27th. I also want to clarify that there was a misconception that we're trying to or remove the limitation of the left-hand turn out of Davis Avenue. We're not, we're maintaining that. I know that was in question, so.
All right, so good evening, everybody. Again, my name's Jacob Breckus. Nice to see you all. As Amy
Get out of the
said,
way.
yeah, there you go. Okay. And actually, I'm looking for, there's one more. There we go. So as Amy said, our goal here tonight was to show the renderings that we've had put together for your consideration. You may notice that these are very similar, and they're intentionally similar to the renderings that we've shown when we originally submitted probably a year ago. Our core, hello? Okay. Our core goal in the design was to create the project to the design and the architectural elements that are in the neighborhood already. If you recall, one of the first things that we did with our architects, Balzer and Tuck, was meet them on site, walk the neighborhood, walk around Vassar and through Raymond Avenue. Our goal remains to create an anchor project that will draw people into the Arlington Town Center, create a destination, create commercial uses as well as residential uses and a hotel, but give a place for people to come to. So we asked our architects to come up with something that has a sense of place, and we're pretty happy with what they've come up with here. So what we'd like to present is three images. The first image that you're looking at right now is, if you can imagine, on Raymond Avenue from where the Thai Spice is towards the northern end of the street. You would be looking at what is currently the center of the school. This is looking at between buildings A and B on the site plan, which has retail on the ground floor, residential units above, and you're getting a view shed into the hotel towards the back. And so, as we discussed, we're trying to keep elements of the school, architectural and design elements that'll honor the school's history as much as possible. If you were to walk south along Raymond Avenue, this is from the view shed of Davis and Raymond. So this is the current entrance to the school property. And so what you're now looking at is, on the right in the foreground is building B. So that's the building that we just saw on the other image. On the left is building E, also retail on the ground floor, residential above. So there will be three separate retail ground floor, residential above along Raymond Avenue to try and enhance the walkability of the street. And then as you enter into the site, you're seeing the residential in the back, which is building C1 and C2. The image, the structure immediately in front of you is the clubhouse, which has amenities for the school for building C1 and C2, so gym and residential amenities are there. And the third image that we'd like to show is a photo taken from the northwest corner of Vassar College, looking at the roundabout. I know that there was a comment at our last public hearing about how tall are the buildings going to be. And, you know, again, everything that we've done, we want to thank the town and planning board and staff for working with us. This has been very collaborative. In looking through the zoning, we created a zoning draft that shows a 7-story building. There's currently a 9-story building right next door. And so we are showing this image to show the context that it's actually a lower height than the neighbor, and sort of fits right in to that neighborhood. So open to feedback and comments. And yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks, Jacob. First, it's a public hearing tonight, so I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
It's moved to seconded to open the public hearing. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
4. Oh, I'm recused.
Oh, you're right. Okay, recusal for Peter, 4-0. I see we have one person signed up to speak, Rob. Lynn, I think it is.
No, is it Bob Legacy?
Or Bob?
Oh, he left.
Well, is there anyone else who wishes to? Come on down.
Hi there, I'm Beth. I actually own a business right in the Arlington area by Vassar College. And I just wanted to say that I'm excited and I would love to see this project come to Arlington. I think on behalf of most of the businesses in Arlington that the increase in foot traffic would be wonderful, as well as because Arlington's considered a walking district. That's something that the BID has talked about a lot. So having the additional apartments and foot traffic, I think, would really help a lot of the businesses. Also, the retail spaces is another thing that we've talked about in our meetings. We have a lack of retail spaces available for new businesses to come into the area. And because what happens is, since it's a destination, people are coming there looking for other businesses and stores to shop. So with that, those are all great things. I also think that obviously more taxes, more tax money for everyone is always a good thing. But I also don't think a motion should dictate the future of the property if revitalization is the main goal. And I also think that sticking to being more efficient and functional is probably the most important thing in regards to keeping the building, or actually in regards to removing the building, I should say, and just starting fresh. And a fresh start would probably be most cost effective for any developer or the developer that's interested in doing the property. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Yep.
Does anyone else wish to comment tonight? Come on down, Ann.
Hi, Ann Shershun, 6 Ward Town Council person. Okay, in the recent plan, we do appreciate the homage being paid to the school and incorporating as many elements as possible in, but I'm not quite ready yet to give up on the school. So I am going to ask the developers to keep an open mind when they're looking for a hotel to go in there. And if they could perhaps find a hotel that has worked with historic properties in the past, because the school would be lovely to be used for banquet rooms, meeting rooms, breakfast rooms, the exercise rooms for the hotel, and then they could build contemporary rooms off of the back of that. And I realize that's probably way out there, but perhaps somebody else would be interested in doing it. And certainly this town needs more meeting rooms and more banquet rooms. We're really short on those two things. And also it would give a unique setting for those. I think it could be really attractive. And, of course, very positive about a hotel being added to this plan, but with a hotel also came lots more parking, and the whole development now looks like a massive parking lot. So anything that can be done to make it look more green and open would be appreciated. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Ann. Anyone else?
My name is Dan Fannin, and I'm a Town Commissioner for Historic Preservation for Ward 1 and New Hamburg. For the past 40 years, I've had both an accounting practice in Manhattan and Los Angeles, and hands-on involvement in the preservation and restoration of many historic buildings and houses. A perspective that came in handy in the Commission's work with the developers of the Raymond Avenue project. When the Historic Commission first met with Jacob for a walkthrough of the Arthur May School, we made our position clear. The first thing we said was that we completely understood and agreed that the primary objective of this project is to make money. This is not a charity, it is a business. And further, that since we believe that good finance and good preservation make good partners, it was our job as a commission to help show how preserving and reusing the school was a way to make that money. Too often planners and developers see historic buildings as a financial hardship, needless dollars poured down the drain. Without question, it takes imagination and hard work to renew the old. I see that every time in the mirror. And when it comes to an old building, it's much easier to neglect it long enough, let fire and vandalism have their way, and eventually find that there's not enough left that is viable for reuse, so it gets torn down or falls down on its own. But the truth more often, as is in the case with the Arthur May School, is that more developer dollars are saved by keeping and adapting a worthy historic structure than raising it from the site where it has long provided a sense of place, a connection to the past, and a beauty of architecture for which most new construction sets a low priority. This is particularly true at what we have here. The cost for tearing down the school remains the financial wild card of this project. Yes, new construction of a hotel on that footprint is less of a headache in terms of site development, but the cost of demolition may end up more of a financial headache than planned for. We need to be clear in our language of what you and the town board may well approve. The plan now states the proposed site development involves replacement of the existing school building with a 5-story hotel. A very gentle way to describe that a school of long-standing merit to the community of Arlington and a place of history and a remembrance to its former students is not to be replaced, but rather destroyed, leveled, removed from its roots and memory. We should also be clear that the Arthur May School is no abandoned wreck crying to be put out of its misery. Before you agree to its destruction, I believe you owe it to the school, its heritage, and its former students who still treasure the site of it, the courtesy of an on-site visit. If you walk its halls, visit its classrooms, see the thickness and strength of its walls, the height of its ceilings, its noble blackboards, and step into its cloakrooms with plumbing and running water, you will find a fully working building with heat, electricity, and most important, no issues of any kind threatening its survival, save the wrecking ball for a new construction. In a better world, it just needs someone to care for it to be full of the life it once had. After our first meeting with Jacob, his architects came up with what only can be described as a magnificent plan to keep the school and make it part of a handsome, part urban, part college campus complex. It was everything the commission and the developers had hoped for. Then, the hard reality of federal tax law changes made that plan, shall we say, difficult. And after what we know was a very hard decision, we are back at the starting point with the school being knocked down. I'm here to make the commission's plea that despite the perhaps unstoppable movement towards demolition, that you as planners see the continued value of the Arthur May School, and now that its stewardship is in your hands, that you continue to explore and encourage its remaining an essential part of this project, not just its facade, as has been suggested, as that is not preservation, but rather as the building as it is and the building that it can be. A handsome, classic American schoolhouse where potential hotel operators can be offered not an old building that's just in the way, but rather a piece of history, a place of innovation and interest, a conference center, a grand entrance to a busy hotel, a place for restaurants, coffee houses, and badly needed meeting rooms. Nothing that can be built on its footprint will match the beauty of age and stature of this fine building. And I encourage you all to see that perhaps, just maybe, the Arthur May School has one more lesson to teach us. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Yeah, as long as those comments are written down, sir. There's a Dan. Could we have a copy of those comments for the record?
Yeah, well, I marked it up here.
Okay.
I'll give you
Forward the letter to the planning department, one out Overocker Road. Thanks. Anyone else wish to comment tonight?
Thank you, everybody, for your time, and I'm sorry I hadn't signed up, and I'm actually kind of speaking a bit more off the cuff. I don't want to repeat myself, because I was here, last month.
Just restate your name for the record.
I'm sorry?
Can you just restate your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, Karen Flaherty, and I live on Lewis Avenue. But I do remain concerned about the scale of the project. It's like it's being shoehorned in my opinion. Because even like on the northwest corner, there's a rocky knoll, kind of just bedrock. Like, I hope that's not going to be blasted, like to squeeze everything in. I'm sure there's a need for apartments. The developer wouldn't be proposing it without it. And I'm sure there must be a need for a hotel, although it's puzzling to me. There's a vacant hotel 3 miles away. It's been boarded up for a while. It's near Locust Grove on Route 9. But really, I'm also concerned, like a couple of the speakers before me, about historic preservations. I don't have any emotional or sentimental attachment to that school building. My parents sent us to Catholic school. But it is a historic part of the neighborhood in which I've invested in my home and in which I pay taxes on my house. Like when you come down Brickyard Hill, for us locals, that's Dutchess Turnpike. As it rises up to Adams, Fairacre Farms, that's Brickyard Hill. When you come down that hill, for example, you see the domed roof and the cupola of the Raymond Avenue School. There was a breezy comment made last month that school is just like the one that's on Dutchess Turnpike, where the student body moved. Well, the one on Dutchess Turnpike was actually built a generation later. And because my own piano teacher when I was in high school said, she was the first class that moved from this high school class was in the Raymond Avenue School back in the day, and then moved to the one on Dutchess Turnpike. So it's a school that's been there a while, and it doesn't look alike. I mean, I know they're both brick, but, the domed roof, that one has a flat roof. I've been on the roof. There was a reason for that. I taught at the one on Dutchess Turnpike, and I had to escort the visiting school photographer up there. It's accessible, the roof, and we stood up there so she could take a picture of all the middle school kids on the athletic field. But in any event, to me, that school with the cupola and the domed roof, it's part of the viewscape. As I said, you see it coming down Brickyard Hill and such. And, the old adage, they don't build them like they used to. I was reminded of that in just the past month. It's not in the town, but in the city of Poughkeepsie, the Poughkeepsie Grand Hotel lost part of its facade. And, so you see the wound in the building in the pictures. It's not one in the newspaper. But, they also said, but don't worry, it was just styrofoam. And I'm thinking, styrofoam, boy, they don't make them like they used to. So I appreciate like the slide where a couple of those front-facing buildings look sort of Tudorish, kind of like the old Juliet Theater. But in the second slide, and maybe you could show that to me again, I don't see like 7-story high-rises. It doesn't look much different in height than, the 2-story buildings in front of it. If these are the high-rises, I don't know, they look shorter, if you see what I'm looking at. I know there's things about artistic perspective and stuff, and that's just not my area of expertise. But I do know this neighborhood. As I said, I live here. I've invested in a house here. When the school, if it does get raised, I hope my windows don't crack or my foundation and stuff. And I'm just worried about losing, a piece of the history of our town with so much of it already been erased. So those are my comments. As I said, they're a little scattered. I hadn't written out a draft and such. And I thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thanks, Karen. Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Karen Hockhauser, and I like how well organized his thoughts were, so I tried to organize mine in a very concise way. I grew up here in Poughkeepsie. My mother grew up here, and my sister actually even went to Arthur S. May, so I feel I do understand the history and value of Poughkeepsie. I recently returned here after living 18 years in Asia in very cosmopolitan centers. And my feedback on this plan is that it can bring so much to Poughkeepsie, so much to its residents, its business owners, and actually my company is located in this Arlington Central District. I went to a Chamber of Commerce breakfast this week, and they mentioned that in New York, 1 million people are leaving New York and all the tax money that's lost. And I love living here. I don't plan on living here, but I do miss having a social center, a place to go and meet friends, instead of having to go out of Poughkeepsie to be central here, to walk to see businesses or play pool or even live and have food and drink and be merry. So I do want to commend Jacob and his team for designing something with that same feel of what Arthur S. May looks at. And I strongly recommend going forward. And in my consulting business in Asia, we always said if we don't move forward, we move backwards. And I really think that a lot of thought has been put in, and it's not just thought of the brain and the dollar, but the heart of really trying to keep consistent with the area. So that was just my 2 cents, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Karen. Anyone else? Seeing none, I move we adjourn the hearing to February 21st, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Let's see, let me start with Eric, and then we'll go around the board.
There was a limited submittal, as the applicant mentioned that the plans and the issues from this that were submitted in December 2019 are still subject to response. So it's basically up for the planning board's discussion of the new materials, namely the recent interchange with historic preservation, the access agreement that was submitted, and the traffic studies. We have traffic comments from the planning board's consultant, but the New York State DOT has not yet commented. That's due probably next week. They indicated a potential response time. So with that, we're just recommending the board discuss the application and defer action. We are encouraging the board to revisit the zoning materials that were provided in November and December, and because that will obviously be a subject discussion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Eric. Anything from engineering down on this today? Okay. We'll just go around the board for comments then. Joan, do you have anything?
Well, I think that the renderings are very attractive, and I think it's apparent that you did make an effort to keep it consistent with the other buildings in the area. I guess I'm concerned about traffic, so I'll be curious to see what DOT ultimately comes in with, but I guess traffic is a big concern of mine at this point, knowing I work close to that area, so I'm familiar with how Raymond Avenue gets and the ingress and egress, so.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Nicole?
Yeah, so you guys have that meeting on the 25th, right? Okay, and so, yeah, just like Joan said, I would be curious as to what DOT said, because that is a busy area there. On Tuesday, we were talking about that exit back onto, what is that, Myron?
To Fulton?
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you think that you guys could kind of come together, and maybe there could be like a speed bump there or something? Because we were just talking about how people might try to kind of cut through there fast, and with the parking and stuff, we don't want any pedestrians to get hurt. We were also talking about maybe some type of pedestrian walkway there as well, just so that people could slow down if people are leaving your property and then going through his property to cut through, or vice versa, so that we don't have any pedestrian problems as far as people getting hurt parking along there.
Yeah, and I may ask to just clarify
Sure.
where, which spot you're talking about, but if I can point out.
I'm talking about that back exit.
Yeah.
On
left there.
So here. So one thing that I just want to share or point to is that, because I think you have a good concern, is are people going to be speeding through there? And I think we had the same concern. So I'm not going to pretend like this was intentional on the outset, but it's a nice side effect of what happened, is that as you're coming out this exit, you've got a turn that's going to slow you down naturally. No matter
Okay.
what you want to do, you're going to have to turn pretty sharp. It's
Not like at 80 degrees.
yeah. So I think we should look at that, but I just wanted to make you.
About a 100-degree turn.
Right.
Going that way.
Okay.
Make you aware of that. And not only that, but it's also, there's a slope grade that's slowing down, so I think it's going to create a caution.
Naturally
Yeah.
do it. Okay. That was just a concern of ours, so.
Yeah. But good thought, and thank you both for those comments.
I know
We
she
really
mentioned the crosswalk. I think we'd, I don't know if there's neighbors, park on one side and they have their house and their apartment on the other side, you're going to be crossing over that. So maybe some paint of a crosswalk between the two buildings on their site or something like that. I don't.
And to be clear, they're talking about, I think, not on your property, but on
On
the
their
island
property.
Property,
All right.
just,
Yes.
just so cars coming out of your exit, see that crosswalk marking and think, oh, somebody might be pedestrians here.
Right, okay. All
That's
right. We'll look
something
at
to
that.
think about
Yeah,
to
appreciate
help
that.
make it safer.
Okay.
As well. Ben, anything?
Nothing to add.
And Peter?
He's accused.
Oh, you're recused in this.
I don't know if Liz had something did you want to add anything to the discussion for tonight?
Thanks. I mean, I still have comprehensive comments that were done December 6th, and so I'm kind of waiting for the larger submittal. I know that we discussed the possibility of having some kind of pedestrian markings on Myron. I was reading the easement. It wasn't clear that it was provided for or not. Another thought would be to have signage for people leaving the Raymond Avenue site. I'm not going to comment on the architecture. I'm waiting to hear more input about that. I just wanted to let the board know that staff had a meeting, of course, and we went over the zoning revisions that had been made just before the project kind of had a hiatus. And so staff discussed that, and we're going to review it in more detail, see if we need to make any more changes, because as we said, zoning is kind of forever, so want to make sure it's right. We discussed the Dutchess County comments that were December of 2017. And today, Stu Messenger called me, and so I forwarded to them the materials that I think they already had, but just so they understood what we were discussing, so that they could look at those. And then when I heard some of the public commentary before about keeping the school or not, the one thing I really don't know is whether or not it's possible to build above the existing footprint of the school. I know that's kind of a crazy idea, but I'm aware that there's very little room on the site to build behind. I don't know how that works with the integrity of the structure, but it's just a thought. So I just look forward to the new submittal.
Yeah, and happy to have them. Of course, I'd also love to follow up with the Historic Commission one more time, but I will share that going up doesn't take away the roller coaster that already exists on the ground floors. So, as you think about entering a hotel and carrying your bags in and traversing that might be something to, so I'm happy to follow up. And I think, as we've said from the get-go, all thoughts are welcome. We want to talk about it, but we also want to make sure that we can move forward and make this happen so that we're not talking about the project, in 10 years. So,
Understood.
I genuinely appreciate all the thoughts.
Great, thanks. Jacob, I know you're still going back and forth with the State Historic Preservation.
Right.
See where that turns out.
Right.
As well as the DOT comments on traffic. I want to throw in my 2 cents. I think the architecture does look nice. You're taking from the Vassar Alumni House, it looks like, and that area. And of course, it's great to see the street trees on the boulevard like this. That kind of makes the landscaping makes it. So somebody had a comment about a lot of parking. So make sure you think about landscaping in the parking lot, like the county greenway guides do as well. Anyone else have any further comments? Let me just take a look. What I had. I mean, it is, as some people had mentioned, it is a welcome to get some more business and apartments in the area and create a destination. And that's the point of the Anchor project, is to help create a destination in this area.
Exactly.
And help all the businesses survive in these trying times sometimes.
Yep. Amen.
Right.
I move that the planning board defer further action pending a response to all planning board conditions of December 18, 2018, as superseded or supplemented by more recent comments of reviewing agencies, town departments, and consultants, the planning board, and the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion moved and seconded. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thanks for your update. Next up on the agenda is all space storage facility expansion, public hearing, lot line revision, special use permit review, and site plan review for a proposed redesign of internal site access on the parcel with existing self-storage facility and development of 2 additional self-storage units on the adjacent vacant parcel, 100 to 120 Salt Point Turnpike, Lot 1, and 231 to 245 North Grand Avenue, Lot 2, zoned IL Light Industry and RM Residence Multifamily respectively. It's an unlisted action, All Space LLC and Page Park Associates LLC owners respectively.
Good evening, Kelly Leibold. My project seems so boring after these very exciting projects that you have. I seem to be being trumped by these every meeting I come to. But thank you. This project, as many of you know, this is a public hearing, so I'm just going to review this project again, even though I know we've already presented this project, so I'll just do a quick presentation. It's located on Salt Point Turnpike. The original facility was built in 2012. I was back before you in 2014 for a small addition in the back. And then, of course, tonight we're here to seek special permit subdivision and site plan approval from you for 2 additional buildings. The property in its entirety consists of 2 parcels, and as we've discussed with you and with the town board, we're proposing to sort of mix and match lines so that we continue to have 2 parcels. We're lobbing off a piece from one parcel in the back to the piece in the front to allocate for the 2 buildings that we're proposing. If you recall, this project is a rezone, and rezones in the town of Poughkeepsie, as in other municipalities, are a little bit sort of complicated. You're back and forth, but I'm happy to say that we're nearing the end. The town board recently approved the rezone for the small parcel that we're, I say lobbing off, but we're moving the lot line revision. And so we're at the end. We're here tonight really to seek the final subdivision approval and special permit for the action. This is a specially permitted use, and then site plan approval for the proposed 2 buildings.
All right, thanks, Kelly. This is a public hearing, so I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion opposed. Motion passes 5-0. Anyone in the audience wish to comment on this application? Seeing none, I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Kristen?
Oh, you want me to say something today?
No. Say what you got to.
Thank you, Kelly, for the recap. So as Kelly mentioned, the application is before you tonight to make a decision regarding the lot line application, special use permit application and site plan review. Staff is recommending the adoption of conditional lot line approval as well as a conditional special use permit approval and conditional site plan approval, subject to comments from town staff, including the town planning department and a couple of others. And I would like to just ask quickly, there was an item I wanted to clarify or confirm regarding one of the buildings that's existing. On the site plan, there was a hatching. There wasn't a detail to confirm whether or not that was actually just striping on the site or if you were proposing to expand one of those existing buildings. So just wanted to clarify that for the record.
There was hatching that was there on the parking area.
Okay, thank you. And also, I know that the planning board is aware that when you were before the town board, there were several comments that had come up regarding lighting, perhaps color of the building, screening, placement of trees and whatnot. And if you had taken any of that into consideration for what is before the board tonight.
Sure. So the three questions that came up, one had to do with landscaping, and I think a lot of the residents that had come to the meeting were unsure about what the project entailed, and which is common. And so I explained that we are adding the additional trees on the top of the hill, which is where most of the residents came from who had concerns. And once we explained that, I think everyone was satisfied with the addition of the trees that really were behind their house. I also at that meeting brought the cross-section that I had previously presented to this board to try to show them that this project is actually being built into the hill. And because it's so close to their house, that I believe that they're going to see more of the existing facility than this one, just the way it's being constructed.
Mm-hmm.
The concern, so that was one concern, and I think everyone was satisfied with that. The second concern had to do with the color of the roof, and so I actually drove over there so I could understand what their concerns were. Because the buildings were built in two phases, the 2012 roofs faded differently than the 2014 roofs, and it was a different material. The material that we're proposing, and I have them here tonight, I can show you, is the same as the 2014, so it's a gray color. For whatever reason, the ones in the front were more of a white color.
Okay.
So we're proposing the same color roof. They had asked, they being the town board, had asked if we could consider a dark color roof. And it seemed de minimis to me. I'm glad I didn't agree to it because apparently in self-storage, a dark roof just absorbs the heat and it's terrible for storage of products. So we can't do, and thank God I didn't agree to it. We need to keep the same light color roof. The other issue had to do with respect to the lighting. And I drove back there. I didn't see it, but I'm just one person. I didn't see how it was that much of an impact. The neighbors that I believe were concerned about the lighting were on Grand, way in the back, on the other side of the property. We have no problem if the planning staff want to go and look and see if they think there's an impact with respect. This is the existing buildings, by the way, not the proposed buildings. If you want shields on those back lights, we can put shields on those back buildings. All those lights were put on in conjunction with Central Hudson as part of a project that they did when they were improving lighting. So if we need to put a shield on those, we will.
Sure, and ultimately, I think, as you stated, it was more of an educational component and understanding what the project actually entailed and where it was going compared to where their property lines and properties were. As of right now, what's proposed, the lighting requirements are met. That isn't to say that at some point zoning could go out there and, always have that conversation if there's something else we can do in addition, especially around the exterior of the buildings or near the residential homes.
Absolutely. And if we think that, if they determine that there's an issue, then we'll put a screen on those lights.
Okay. Oh, and you're also in for architectural review.
Yes. I'm going to pretend to be an architect. Yes.
Let's go around the board. Ben, you have any comments tonight? Peter?
Just for the record, for the town engineer, he reviewed the SWIP. There's a very steep change in elevation on the southeast corner of this toward Building B. You're okay with the solutions that have been proposed by the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Short and sweet. Great. Nicole, it's all to you first.
No, not too much. I just had a couple of comments here, one from the fire department. the detail of the entry fee, I guess it's not documented on the site details, so that was one thing, and I'm sure you probably got that comment too.
We did. We actually met with the fire department. They came over to the office. We've already ordered the Knox box that they wanted. They've
Right.
approved it, and we're just waiting for it to come in. And the way it works is there's a Knox box there, and they can open it, and there's actually a key in there if there's a power outage that they can open up the gate. So they seem very happy with it. He was just in the other day. They seem happy with the product, and they approved it. So that will go on the gate.
Okay.
Good.
All right, thanks.
Joan?
No, I have no comments.
Thanks. I think you covered most everything, Kelly. We'll go back and forth with Kristen here, the neighbors' concerns about the light village, and you're putting this, the evergreen trees there as well
Yes.
as screening. Any additional evergreen tree? I think there was a neighbor on the North Grand also. I didn't see evergreen trees there, but I noticed
There-
already some.
There were
Escaping in the
8,
area.
there's 8, so I think there's 26 on the top, if I remember correctly. And the way that they're spread out were, where you can see the project
Yep.
the most from those houses. As you
From
get.
the houses there.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if there's is there enough distance maybe between the North Grand and the.
There
on the
really
east
is,
side?
and I'm trying to remember the neighbor that was there, and I think everyone acknowledged that there was such a distance. There's all of that wooded area.
I think he was more concerned
In the
about
back.
an entrance coming out onto North Grand there.
Right, right.
Which is.
Yes,
so
it was a
once
gentleman that was there,
once he
and there's
understood the
nothing.
project,
Yeah.
okay. And the other thing that one of the residents complained about was, last time they built, there was a lot of construction noise. So, as long as you're
Well, it can't be
following
any
the
worse than
hours.
what they're dealing with right now. So I know there's a big construction project right next to them. There's no blasting, so we've, been in this area before where
Yeah.
we've had to do construction. I think the town has a noise ordinance and construction hours that we
Right.
would adhere
So
to.
as long as you're following that. All right, thanks.
And I'll also say too that, we're local and I think most of the people know where we are and who we are. So if there's a problem, anyone can reach out to us with respect to construction.
All right. Good to go.
Do you need this?
We did a public hearing, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, I think I closed that.
This one. Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
I move that the planning board grant conditional lot line approval, subject to the following, 1.
Second.
Moved and seconded to grant conditional. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
I just want to note, I'm sorry to interrupt, for the record, that the lot line revision approval is actually valid through March 18th, 2019. You do have the opportunity to extend that, should you need more time. But based on our conversation, that was okay for.
Yes,
for
we
now.
discussed that, yep, and we agreed. And we acknowledged that there was going to be a point in time where the chairman would have to sign the plan that gets submitted to the county for filing only, and then we will come back with the site plan drawings that would need your signature. So there'll be an interim drawing to
Okay,
be
good.
signed.
Yes.
Sounds good.
I move that the planning board find that the criteria for the granting of a special use permit is set forth in Town Code 210-152.1 L3 and M have been met, and grant conditional special use permit approval for the 2 additional self-storage buildings on the parcel, and grant conditional site plan approval for the project, subject to the following. Respond to the comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, and said response to be reviewed by the planning department as to adequacy and completeness, inclusive of, but not limited to, the following 1 through 4.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Do you ready to conduct architectural tonight?
Yes. I'm putting these up, and you very likely cannot see them, so I passed out 11 by 17s of each building.
Are you going to construct one here for us?
Yes. We're gonna all do it together. So the buildings are a very beautiful, lovely metal material, as most of you know. I really have the materials that are going to be used that I can leave with you so that you can see it.
This is why we have no storage space.
Yeah.
So this is the roof. So everyone understands what the color was going to be. Are you going to be my
Okay.
Vanna tonight?
And Kelly, you said
You're
that's
so
the more gray, Kelly, you said that was the more gray of the
Yes,
two, right?
correct,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what some of the neighbors' concern was, the bright
If it
white
were gonna
was
Yeah.
reflecting.
fade- yes.
but-
Reflection.
but-
Yes.
But it has to be on the lighter side.
Correct. Yes, so this is the siding. I feel like, this is such a beautiful siding. You got the side, don't cut your finger, whatever you do. Yes. We really deserve kudos for this. The downspout.
Oh, that's a nice color touch.
Is that beautiful? Yes. The door mullion. It's the same color as the tan. And everything else is the same. So gutters are the green, and I'll leave these with you so Carol can have them next to her desk.
And the J
forever.
channel.
And then the J channel, yes, for how long? And so the elevations you have in the package that I just handed to you, it's identical to what's out there. The one side that you see that's closer to the hill is built into the wall, so the back has obviously no doors on that
Doors on
particular
the back
building.
side. That's what I was,
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
yep, and voila, that's the architectural.
Anyone have any comments on the architecture?
No.
I think Vanna did a great job.
Carol did a great job.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, right.
Wait, that's me.
I move we accept architecture as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept architecture. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Good luck. Next on the agenda is Verizon Wireless, Ronduck Road Micro, Fox Run Apartments, site plan public hearing for a proposed installation of a small cell wireless telecommunications facility on the rooftop of an existing four-story residential building, 1 to 60 Campus View Court, zoned FC Fairview Center District and Prod Planned Residential Overlay District, 14.09 acres. It's an unlisted action, Fox Run at Fulton LLC owner. I move we adjourn the public hearing to February 21st, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next up is Haifa Holdings LLC. Sorry.
Yep.
We're finished with the public hearings officially, but at this time, I'll move that we allow public comment on any other items on tonight's agenda. We ask that you please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and the planning board will consider any comments made during this portion of the meeting, but will not respond to them directly during the meeting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to allow for public comment. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Does anyone in the audience wish to comment on any other items on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I move we resume the meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is Haifa Holdings LLC, 819 Main Street. For lead agency intent, special use permit, and site plan review for a proposed construction of a 15,427 square foot, 3-story mixed-use building with 4,793 square foot of commercial space on the first floor and a total of 12 residential units on the upper floors. 819 Main Street, zoned ATC Arlington Town Center District, 0.51 acres. It's an unlisted action. Haifa Holdings LLC owner.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board. My name is Rich Carney with Chase & Companies.
Chris Lapine with the Chazen Companies.
Joe Plouffe from Tinkleman Architecture.
Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
It's a new project before the board, so please describe your.
Okay. The applicant and property owner of the project site, Haifa Holdings LLC, is proposing construction of a mixed-use commercial and residential building on their .51 acre parcel in the town of Poughkeepsie, located at 819 Main Street. The site is currently vacant, having previously been the site of an auto body shop, which the building has since been removed. The project consists of a proposed 15,427 square foot, three-story mixed-use building. The first floor covers 4,793 square feet, which includes approximately 4,600 square feet of leasable retail space. The second and third floors consist of a total of 12 residential apartment units with 3 one-bedroom and 3 two-bedroom units on each floor. The project is situated in the Arlington Town Center zoning district. We've added site landscaping details, including decorative stone walls and pedestrian benches in the design in order to conform with the design standards of the ATC. Mixed residential and non-residential units within multi-story structures is an allowed use in the ATC zoning district by special use permit by the planning board per town of Poughkeepsie zoning code. Also per the zoning code, 4 parking spaces are required per 2,000 square feet of commercial space and 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit for the residential floors, which comes out to 10 required parking spaces for commercial and 18 for the residential, totaling 28 required parking spaces. Our site plan proposes 25 spaces on site, along with 3 spaces located off-site in the Woodcliff Avenue right-of-way. This totals 28 proposed parking spaces for the project in order to meet the minimum by code. This layout has been discussed with the town highway supervisor and found acceptable so far between the 2 parking lots. Due to the elevation difference between the Main Street parking lot and the Woodcliff Avenue parking lots, we're proposing 2 refuse enclosures for the building. The refuse enclosure on the Woodcliff Avenue parking lot would primarily serve residential tenants, and the enclosure on the Main Street side of the building would serve the retail tenants, which walk out on the first floor on the Main Street side. The Main Street refuse enclosure is accessed by a proposed paved access drive, which has a separate access onto Main Street from the Main Street parking lot. This paved drive is located partially within an easement access for the adjacent property owner, McNiff, which is 9 feet wide and has approximately 4.5 feet extending onto either property along the property line. This easement is there for access for McNiff to the rear of the building, and we believe that paving this access drive to the refuse enclosure will also serve to keep it open and unobstructed. And finally, the site is served by municipal water and sewer services. Stormwater for the site, per our site plan right now, is proposed to be directed to the DC DPW-owned storm sewer system located in the Main Street right-of-way, pending approval by that department. I'll turn it over to Joe from Tinkleman Architecture to go into more detail about the architecture.
Okay, this is a rendering from the Main Street side. You could see that we're proposing some landscaping buffer between the Main Street and the parking, as well as an entry sign for the property as well within this buffer. And then this is the retail lower level. We're going to have curtain wall storefront with black mullions. Precast bases along the brick piers at the lowest level. This is a brick facade with precast lintels on above the windows, a precast band, and then for the upper level is a hardy reveal plank system for that. We are proposing to have a cantilevered entry canopy there with the building number sign. As well as, we are going to have a proposal for the signage for the retail at the lower level, which we will provide.
Is this going to be rooftop HVAC or?
Yes.
Top, so, I mean, we want to, our code is to make sure that stuff's hidden.
Yes, we're
So-
planning on putting a louver screen around the rooftop. They're going to be set in to the middle of the building as much as possible to eliminate the view.
Why wouldn't you just put all the parking in the back and just move the building more Main Street? Because this is Arlington, the Arlington area where we're trying to get more foot traffic.
Right. We did look at that, and it was the topography of the site that was the challenge. We do have an elevation difference of approximately 16 feet.
Yeah, there's about an 18-foot elevation difference between the front and the rear of the property.
It's a tough site.
Right, so to have a driveway access aisle to get behind the building would take up a lot of space and would reduce the footprint of the building. And then we're left with this weird, awkward space between the Woodcliff side, and then if the building was up forward, you would have a kind of a gap in between there, which we wouldn't be able to get access from Woodcliff side.
I just had one other comment about the architecture. I see a stairway on the left side on this rendering, but I don't see it on the.
Yes,
site
initially we had a stairway there, but we've since eliminated that stairway.
But there's internal stairways that can get from residential's down to the street level, right?
There is, the residents can enter on both sides, the Main Street, and this is the proposed elevation for the Woodcliff side. It's a two-story. We're going to have the brick at the lower level. Again, we have precast, and then the hardy reveal panels below the windows, and then at the upper level, we have the hardy planks as well.
All right.
Question, with respect to parking, are you anticipating or going to encourage like residential parking in the back, commercial parking in the front?
Yes, that's how we foresee it, that most of the residents will park on the Woodcliff side and enter through there, and most of the retail at the lower level.
All right, let's just, if you're finished with your presentation, let's move on to.
Are you all set? You're set?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the overview. So as it was mentioned, this is located in the ATC zoning district. I'll leave it at that for now. Right now, we've identified this proposed action as an unlisted action subject to a coordinated review. So the applicant is really here as their first appearance before the board to gain your insight about the project, any comments or questions you might have to help them better go back and reevaluate their project and come back to you again. So I do have preliminary comments for site plan review, but again, this is the first time that you're seeing this project, so staff would recommend adopting a seeker lead agency intent resolution and deferring action on the application with comments pending establishment of a lead agency.
Okay, thanks, Kristen.
And I think I do have some comments, this has come up in the past, I do have some comments on the EAF submission. It's really just for cleaning up the record, nothing that would hinder circulating at this time.
Okay, so we could circulate. All right, so anything, Don, I know it's a tough site topography wise.
Yeah, I think our two biggest comments probably similar to what the DPW has, which is there is not a SWIP here because it's less than an acre disturbance, so they're going to have to get county approval for the stormwater. And the second one is the refuse enclosure in the front, which I know you've discussed as well. You know, you've got a movement coming out right next to another 2 or 3 story building backing out onto the street. So, but the county is suggesting they try to do something different, and we would suggest the same. And I guess it'll be up to the county because it is a county road.
Okay, thanks, Don. The concept overall, it's good to have some apartments, that's the intent of the Arlington Town Center. It is just a little under in this trash. I don't know if you said that I see people parking behind the White House there now. You're saying there's an easement there that's required, maintained? Them to
Yes.
get back there?
There's an existing access easement between the two parcels that go along this corridor here. I'm sorry, this corridor here.
Okay.
So we maintain that, and we thought it'd also provide an opportunity for refuse pickup on that side, as opposed to having tenants on the first floor go up the set-aside stairs and walk 150 feet, you know.
Yeah, I think that's the other option to be discussed, I guess, versus backing out on.
The concern obviously
Street.
being is during the winter, going up a set of metal steps is one of the things that we're thinking about.
Is it possible to consider an internal access? And also, do you have an idea of tenants you'd be putting in there? Just trying to gauge level of trash or refuse.
There are no tenants at this time for the retail section of it.
Okay, you don't know, yeah, so don't know what's gonna be there as far as how much trash they're gonna create.
Right.
One of the other options that we've
tight
actually started exploring is seeing if we could have side road pickup as well. We suspect that the neighboring parcel must have that because there's no refuse enclosure in their rear of the property.
We also know in the ATC district, because this has come up in other areas, that there are services that are hired where they might come in once or twice a week. I don't know what the service is, but for picking up and taking off site instead of having a separate refuse area. Just something to consider.
Yeah, just not crazy about the idea of them backing out onto Main Street, but we'll,
I'm sorry, there's probably one other thing I should have mentioned. There's going to be a pretty significant retaining wall, just so you're aware. I mean, it's going to mostly be hidden, I think, on the left-hand side, but it's, I forget, Chris, is it 15, 16 feet high?
Yeah, it fluctuates, but it's about 18 feet high. That's the existing elevation difference right now. It's approximately the height of the existing Valero gas station that's there.
okay. You go around for board, start with Peter.
Have you engaged the DPW in terms of, you're asking for a new curb cut? Have you had any conversation with them?
Our initial dialogue with the DPW has been related to the existing drainage along their corridor. We've also requested we've actually had to deal with their maintenance group for the purpose of the survey. We've requested a meeting with the engineering group to discuss our new curb cut. We are waiting on their reply for that meeting.
All right, so they're aware that you're going to be making that application?
Correct. They're also aware, and we had informed them that there's an existing easement as well for the neighboring parcel. So that was part of the reason why there's two access points, one for ours and one for their parcel.
Someone had mentioned earlier, this is not consistent with the goals and objectives of the Arlington Town Center. Probably one of the keystone of the Arlington Town Center is pedestrian friendly. And when you look at your parking area placed next to the area next door directly to the west, you're really looking at a sea of blacktop. So I guess what I would suggest that you do is try to find some way to soften that parking area because it's going to be difficult to support it. And when you look at the goals and objectives of that zoning area.
So just for clarification, you're talking about this particular
Yes.
area, parking area.
Yep.
We've incorporated approximately a 6-foot landscaping area along that corridor.
I see that from the
separated
photo
there.
that you have some landscaping in the.
And we've
in the
used
front.
this, since this is going to be a paved access drive that goes to the neighboring parcel, we've tried to delineate a nice walking area through stamped pavement for the pedestrian connection from the sidewalk to the retail space.
If I were an architect, I would come up with an idea myself, but since I'm not, I'm just saying, if you just give it a little bit of thought and see if you can come up with something that is a little bit more user-friendly, more pedestrian-friendly than what you proposed here. I don't have an idea, but I'm sure that you'll come up with something.
All right. Anything else?
Thank you.
Ben, do you have any comments?
noticed on the fire department's comments, they seem to be concerned with the width to comply with fire apparatus access and the snow storage area. It's kind of small and it's not marked. Should be signage fire lane.
You're talking about this route right here?
Yeah, in the back where it says the upper lot should be widened to 20 feet in order to comply with fire apparatus access.
Yeah, we have the ability to do that. We can make.
Sorry?
We have the ability to do that. We're going to make that modification.
Okay. What about the snow storage?
We currently have.
Postage stamp?
I'm sorry?
A little postage stamp there?
Well, we currently have snow storage located here for the upper lot. It's approximately, the depth of it is somewhere around 25 to 30 feet in depth, and it's got a space area here of, I think, 18 feet. So we're probably roughly around the 450 to 500 square foot area for the snow storage.
Is that the only purpose of that?
It also serves for backing up as well, for the handicap space as well. We wanted to give them a little bit more of a added space.
Nothing in the front, right?
There's this
For
snow storage here will have to be, for the front would have to be hauled off site.
Hauled off.
Okay. All right.
You know, one other consideration here from an architecture standpoint. Our code really discourages flat roofs. If there's something you could come up with, you know, that would offer some kind of a pitched roof design.
In the ATC center, yeah, that's true, Peter. It kind of discourages it. And that helps hide the HVAC as well. I know, you know, like out by Adams, they did some false frontage there. That's one example to look at.
We also did receive county comments today. Again, hot off the press. They're deeming the application incomplete for their formal 30-day site plan or review. And I mean, that's sort of to be expected at this point. It is the first time it's coming before the board. You're gauging input from the board and having this dialogue. But I think it would almost make sense. I unfortunately was unable to attend a pre-application meeting, but maybe now that we have something on paper, it might be beneficial to sit down and perhaps have a conceptual level meeting again with some town staff.
We can do that.
So you're implying we shouldn't move for lead agency because they're...
Just based on what some of the dialogue I'm hearing, I think it would be beneficial to have a conversation related to the site plan, not necessarily related to the seeker at this point, for lead agency intent.
I think we would still I think it would still make sense to circulate for lead agency, but in the meantime, work on some of these.
Okay.
We'd like to circulate if we could for lead agency.
Correct.
Great.
But my understanding, if I'm correct.
Right. We met before at a pre-app meeting and went through this, so perhaps, I mean, we got comments from Mike, and perhaps we can share those and go through the meeting with you on those comments and what we went through. But if anything else that we want to look at specifically, we can.
Yeah, sure. I'm just thinking about some of the concerns that have come out of this are obviously the parking. Again, it's in an ATC district. That's not something that should be a showstopper at this point, in my humble opinion. But also just maybe having a conversation, getting town highway superintendent involved, especially if you're still proposing that work on Woodcliff Avenue, because you're proposing parking in town right of way.
Yeah, I think one of the things that came out of your initial pre-app meeting was you recommended the applicant meet with the highway superintendent.
Right.
That meeting took place in late November 28th. We met with Supervisor Pfeiffer in the
Okay.
field. And we reviewed this layout with him, and he actually felt very comfortable and preferred to have the curbing facing Woodcliff, and it provided him the opportunity for snow storage as opposed to having the parking on the opposite side of it. We would be responsible, he said, for cleaning this particular area. One of the things he mentioned is as part of the process, you'd have to go, he'd have to write a letter of approval, and we'd have to go, I guess, get permission from the town board for parking within the right-of-way. So part of the layout here was based upon the input that was provided by the highway super.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Oh, one other thing to mention too, sorry, construction related, they will be seeking a blasting permit.
That was my next question. Because it's quite the rock wall there. I don't know how much of that rock you gotta take away to build the building into it, but that's a concern for the, neighboring house there that's been fairly old, I think, so.
And I know that the
Falls in-
applicant is aware of this and it's in your site plans currently.
Yeah, one of the things we were just talking about prior to this meeting is the applicant's going to have a geotech analysis performed to give us some idea of the integrity of the rock out there. Perhaps it may be able to be removed by mechanical means.
That would be best.
We agree. But we'll have to wait for those findings. And we'd be happy to share them with the board as well.
Yes, please.
Otherwise, you gotta worry about the houses behind as well as next door and
the gas station.
Foundations and the gas station, for example.
So,
you don't want those lines rupturing.
Absolutely not.
Anything further, Nicole?
Not really. I mean, you guys don't know who's going into that commercial space, so you can't really provide sign details. And one of my other questions was, do you need loading space? But again, you don't know who's going in there, so it's not really a question that can be answered at this time. I only had one other comment. Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development had mentioned that you could maybe go to Formosa Restaurant and talk to them about shared parking. I would advise that would be a bad idea considering the fact that the restaurant is up for sale. So you don't know who would be the next tenant, so I don't think that would be a good idea. But other than that, that's all I had to say.
All right.
Yeah, thank
Joan?
Yeah, no, I have no comments this time.
Nothing additional? Yeah, my main comment was the blasting. And we've talked about, there's a concern of light spillage that always, the neighboring apartments there up on top of the White House. Let's see what else. Talked about the stairway's not gonna be there. And you do have a crosswalk to the main street sidewalk. What's the height of this building currently compared to the White House, do you think? I was just curious how the rendering it's from the side there.
Referring to the rear. I think he's referring to the rear.
Oh, the neighbor?
Doesn't look significantly higher, but looks about the same. Yeah, that. Yes, right. Just trying to place the scale of it into the air.
Be right around at the upper level floor, the pitch height. Might be at the midpoint, so I can get an approximate number.
Just something to look up for the next meeting. Just curious how far off, because it's going to tower above the garage, the gas station next door a little bit, other than a canopy, I guess. But it's certainly a good use for the Arlington Town Center to get some apartments in there.
I think one of the reasons you're seeing this here is what we're trying to do is we're trying to minimize the amount of rock removal, and we're using like about a 16-foot high ceiling on the first floor to minimize that.
Okay, so it's your
16 or 17 feet, I think, because we went back and forth on this and we looked at rock removal versus the elevation of the building, and we Ultimately, we think this is going to be by mechanical means for the removal, and we're trying to minimize the duration of that. And so we went with the height of this that's shown here before you.
Yeah, just I want to make sure it's not totally out of scale with the surroundings.
Did the board want to discuss the 8-foot parking spaces, the width of the parking spaces that are in that area?
That's
On the back there, you mean, on the?
good point.
Yeah.
Yep. Those three on the back there, they're substandard by a foot. So I don't know if you squish the landscaping a little bit more or something.
We can revisit that. There's the possibility, we do have some area here to move the parking up or put it a little bit more on an angle. And we have the ability to perhaps reduce the width of that as well.
Yep. Between that and, as Ben mentioned, the fire access, the width of the drive aisle there as well. So,
Just caught on the Main Street Avenue parking lot. There's an access aisle there, but there's no identified handicap spot on the right side there.
For backing up.
on the right side, yeah, what is that that extra hash like?
So what we've done here is we're trying to provide the ability for the handicap parking space to back up.
Okay.
And then pull out if they needed the additional space, is what the intent was. This is an easier movement for that individual to
Oh,
make
sure.
than if we put that space here. And our other thought process was this individual parking here, if no one's occupying this striped area here, can do the same and then back out.
Okay. That makes sense. We're curious what that was. Because that could have been another parking space, but if it's needed for the backup, then. Can you mention, I heard you mention bench or benches, where on a site plan would that be?
We had benches out here in the front.
Okay, great. Benches, and is there any landscaping? I'm not sure if I see a street tree or not, other than the side. I think the county had some comments on that to make it more Arlington Town Center friendly.
We do have some trees planted along this area between the dwelling to the, or the building to the east. We also have some over here as well. We do have trees in the rear, in the eastern corner of this area, and then along our landscape buffer with Woodcliff.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I see the county beat me to the punch about a bike rack, so you could see if there's a spot for that. Anyone else have anything?
Question. Just to ask about it now, so it doesn't come up later. Did you look at a concept for a building that ran longitudinally along with the front of Main Street and parking on the side? You know, from the front to the rear of the lot along, like, for example, against the McNiff building? I'm just wondering, did you look at that and what was your thinking?
So
in other words, right now, you've got the building set back with all the parking in front.
Right.
So this, which kind of forms a rectangle, you know, in front of the rock cut, in front of the rock escarpment. So another way to use that would be, instead of having a square building with space in front, would be to have a narrower rectangular building with parking on the
Longer
side.
square.
So since a couple of board members had talked about the ATC requirements and where parking is, I just wondered, what was your thinking? I imagine you probably excluded it for a reason. If you wanted to share that reasoning, it might
Putting a building like this.
It was just the narrow width. and
It's a
dimensions
microphone.
are- Narrow width of the dimension of the lot, and then by the time you get the access aisle and parking, you're left with the minimum dimension and a very long building, and that doesn't really, for us, it wasn't as attractive, and also it wouldn't be practical for the residential dwellings.
Thank you.
It's good to look at, it's a tight space.
It
It's
is.
good to look at all the options between the topography and the L shape. All right. We're ready to, yeah.
I move that the planning board declare its intent to be lead agency, coordinate the environmental review of the proposed project as an unlisted action, and authorize the planning department circulation of a notice of said intent, a copy of the EAF, and a copy of the application to the identified involved agencies.
Second.
Moved and seconded to circulate for lead agency. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
I move that the planning board defer action on this application pending the establishment of a lead agency and direct the applicant to respond to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, including but not limited to the following 1 through 10,
Can I add 11 comments from tonight?
and adding 11 comments for tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to defer action pending the establishment of a lead agency. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Well, thanks. I mean, it's a great conceptual project. It's just some details to work through since it's such a tight site. So,
Thank you for your time this evening. Kristen, could we call you tomorrow to something? Would you want the county planning involved in that meeting or just internal here?
I think just internal would be fine for now.
yeah. Okay, next up, Lexington Center Office. It's 41 Page Park Drive, site plan review for a proposed expansion of existing Lexington Center facility to provide additional administrative space, doctor's offices, counseling, educational rooms, medication storage room, and a new reception area, along with modifications to the existing restrooms and entrance. 41 Page Park Drive, zoned IH Heavy Industrial District, 5.27 acres, a type 2 action, and Henry G. Page Jr., Associates owner. Welcome.
Good evening.
Another
My
new
name is Rich Rennie with Rennie Engineering, and this is,
And I'm Barbara Tapala with Lexington Center for Recovery.
so to give a little background on the project, Lexington Center currently has 2 offices in the town of Poughkeepsie. One is at 230 North Road, on the north end of town, and the other one is at 41 Page Park. They would like to consolidate that and bring everything to the 41 Page Park location. They are proposing to take an additional 10,000 square feet of that building and reconstruct that into their offices. They currently have about 8,500 square feet now. The Lexington Center, a little background on them, they're a nonprofit clinic. They assist anyone in the community who's affected by substance abuse. And they have a whole series of programs. If you have questions on that, Barbara's here to answer that. The majority of the project is reconstructing the interior space. But on the outside of the building, we are proposing to rebuild an existing vestibule that is there now. It kind of looks like a little shack on the building, but we're proposing to do that nice with metal roofing and with some glass storefront, build a new handicap ramp and dress it up. And then also with our code study within the building for egress reasons, we have to add 2 additional doorways onto the one end of the building as well. And then the parking area, we're just going to restripe that and add handicap parking spaces to that.
Okay, thanks. Like a pretty straightforward project. You're not adding onto the building significantly or doing anything. Just making use of some space. Kristen?
Well, you just stole my thunder.
Oh.
You know, John used to do that too. But thank you, Rich, for the overview. And This application actually meets the seeker type 2 action item, so there is no further environmental review involved. Most of the work, as stated, is primarily inside of the building. They are looking to restripe the parking lot, include some additional handicap spaces. I have noted, I was using Google imagery actually, and I had noticed that there was a bicycle rack, I think, somewhere on the site. Just get a designated area for that.
Sure.
Just because the application is coming in and the site is coming before the board does have discretion over the applicability of guidelines listed in Section 21040, which are design standards. Specifically, I called out just the refuse enclosure or refuse area. I know it's kind of floating in the parking lot now. There's no actual enclosure, but again, that would be up for a discussion item and discretion item by the planning board this evening, how much you will hold the applicant to that. Also, there was just a discrepancy as to the number that was identified in the parking schedule versus the actual number of counted spaces. Just want to rectify that, make sure that's consistent. Staff is recommending you would accept a request for a public hearing waiver, the adoption of a seeker resolution for a type 2 action, and also moving forward with a conditional site plan approval because you did in fact receive as an addendum this evening the Dutchess County Planning letter. They actually responded as a matter of local concern. There are no comments.
Thanks, Kristen. Anything from a
Nothing of any consequence.
Stormwater, whatever. Parking lot, I think, is in pretty good shape there. I don't know if you're gonna plan to reseal it or do any repaving.
No proposed repaving. The asphalt, it is in good condition, but all the striping has just faded away.
Faded away, so it's just restriping matter. Okay. All right, let's go around, start with Joan. All
I don't have any comments.
right, Nicole?
No, all my questions were already answered. I think this is actually going to make the area look a little prettier because right now some of those other buildings, as we just said, the striping for the parking, it's not there, and some of the buildings look a little, aged, and so what you're going to be doing is going to make it look better. So,
All right, thanks. Ben?
It's a good thing, do it.
And Peter? I guess my only question remaining is, the trash enclosure. Where's the trash currently being put out? And you hate to see those bins rolling around the parking lot sometimes.
I'll hold this up so everybody can see it. So the front of the building is here.
Right.
The back is here. There's a small fenced-in area that has all the HVAC equipment and mechanicals. The dumpsters kind of float in the back. We submitted pictures of the building. We went on all four sides of the building.
Okay.
And you can see the dumpsters in the back of the building on those photographs. And that end of the building, the tenants are more on the industrial side, I believe. So, they're using the dumpster more where the front portion of the building now is going to be office. So there's going to be very little additional garbage used by them.
Paper mainly, I guess.
Not even so much. We're going paperless. Everything's electronic. So we're getting rid of paper more and more.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So whatever you do have, you carry out to the back there.
We do, yes.
And your main entrance will be on the side here, so that's good.
And we already have a main entrance on the front too for the existing clinic that's there.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yep.
then if we move into the other space, the other front entrance would also become ours. There's two front doors.
Yep.
And then there'll be a
But-
new front door, a new side door
The
put on.
side door, but that's where I see the reception area.
Yes.
That's coming in, so.
You're not proposing any signage or sign changes, are you?
No.
Okay.
Except for, we did show on our rendering of the vestibule.
Oh, yeah.
That there would be the sign with their logo on the top of the new side vestibule, just to designate that door.
Okay. I'm just going to confirm with our zoning administrator whether or not that would require, I actually did not review her comments.
You could always put it on the
There one
doors
there
itself.
already?
Yeah, I can follow up with our zoning administrator and
Yeah,
coordinate
let us
that.
know what
Yeah.
needs to be done if we had to come back for that, or Barbara was
We
saying.
could always put like
put
decal
some-
logo right on the door, the glass door itself. A lot of our other sites have the signage done in that way, so we could actually do
Yeah.
the same thing.
But we need a way to let people know that
Oh,
new site
absolutely.
entrance, what it is.
Lizette didn't address it in her letters. We'll ask her.
Actually, I probably would prefer to put on the doors.
Okay.
Yeah, so, should be okay.
Okay.
Okay, so Barbara thinks.
Yeah, I actually
put
prefer to
something-
put it on the door as opposed to putting it on the awning.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so,
So it
yeah.
identifies for people coming to the service, but it's not really out there. You know, it's private in another kind of way.
Oh, sure, sure. When you resubmit your site plan package and you kind of correct the parking schedule numbers and all that, if you can just, you'll just remove that and resubmit what it will look like,
Yes,
that would
yeah,
be
we'll
great.
give you
Okay.
some sort of a, either on the plan or a separate 8.5 by 11 and give you the size of it.
Perfect, thank you.
I move the planning board waive the public hearing for Lexington Center Office Park, 41 Page Park Drive, site plan review per Town Code 210-151L.
Second.
Moved and seconded to waive public hearing. Call to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
I move that the planning board determine that the proposal meets the criteria for a seeker type 2 action pursuant to seeker part 617.5C2 and no further environmental review is required.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
I move that the planning board grant a conditional site plan approval for Lexington Center Office Park, 41 Page Park Drive, subject to the following. Respond to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, and said response to be reviewed by the planning department as to adequacy and completeness inclusive of but not limited to the following 1 through 8.
Second.
Moved and seconded to grant conditional. Call to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And we're changing some architecture by virtue of just the entryway, should we?
Just a sign.
Just the sign, okay. So we don't even need to do architectural review from that standpoint.
So is the recommendations that the board just adopted is adopting the staff's recommendation that the trash and storage enclosure be constructed of masonry walls with a steel gate compatible with the walls of the building? Is that, I think that's what the board just adopted, and there was a lot of discussion. So if the board was inclined to do other than that, then you might want to reconsider.
Because I thought I heard no.
Oh,
I
I'm sorry,
thought
did
I
you say
heard
no?
no,
I
but
apologize, missed that.
I heard in the discussion.
I was thinking
Oh, that's
no.
fine.
Yeah, that's,
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I missed that.
I was thinking it's kind of an industrial area. It's in the back there against the, I mean, we see all the rendering, the pictures of it, so.
Yeah.
So it is acceptable to leave the
Yes.
dumpsters as is?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right, go forth.
Okay.
Great, thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No. It's a good catch. No need to.
Good, how are you?
Next, Violet Avenue Self-Storage, a new discussion for a new, regarding a conceptual plan to amend an existing site plan and self-storage facility known as M&M Self-Storage to construct additional storage units on 2 town and 1 city of Poughkeepsie parcels. 6 Violet Avenue, 5 to 16 Budget Drive, and Parker Avenue, zoned IH, heavy industry. And District 5.01 acres. And Barbara Masuda, Incorporated owner. Welcome
Hi.
back.
Thanks.
The long haul tonight.
Amy Bombardieri from the Chazen Companies again. I have maps if you want to put the screen down. I don't know. if
Oh,
it's-
sure, yeah. Sandy, if you could put the screen down.
That would be good.
Sandy.
Sandy.
Hi, Sandy.
Thank you.
So the owners actually own the 3 parcels that are adjacent to each other, one of which is in the city of Poughkeepsie, and the 2 in the town are the ones we're discussing tonight. The existing facility is a number of things. It's a self-storage, a budget rental car, van rental, truck rental,
RV rental.
RV rental. There's a auto body shop on site, and I think there's just a general mechanic shop on site. So our client is proposing to change it to complete self-storage, so trying to max out the site. So a number of buildings would be removed. There's one self-storage building there right now. That's this long one.
That corner there.
Better with my right hand. So there's an office up front, and then there's 2 smaller buildings, and the mechanic shop is on the south side near the property line. They currently have done a phase 2 environmental site assessment, and they're waiting for results from that. The parcel's in the IH zoning district. It is surrounded by residential districts. The parcel in the city, I don't know that it's strictly residential. It's the Walkway Gateway District. And the town of Poughkeepsie has a 150-foot setback to buildings when you're adjacent to a residential district. So they would probably need a number of variances to develop the site. And we'd need a determination on whether the 150-foot setback is required from the municipal line as well.
Where's the city parcel on the south side there?
What is it?
That triangle on the south side is the city parcel?
Yeah, they're parking vehicles on there. It's mostly green. There's a billboard sign on the south side, right near the town line, and then beyond that, it's mostly green space.
I just remember on the concept plan, I did not see any storage unit proposed on that site.
We're not dealing with the city at all. I don't know that it's actually even a permitted use there.
Okay.
I'm not sure. So we did a quick concept.
Yeah, let's see that.
It shows 6 storage units. The existing home, house, office on the northwest side would continue to be an office space for the rental facility. And the intent is to just max out as much self-storage units as possible. I think we're actually decreasing the impervious with this layout from what exists. However, we still don't have a survey to determine that. So just wanted to kind of see what the board thought about the layout and the proposal.
Are these units all, would they be similar to the one building that's already there, most likely? Or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
There may be some climate-controlled units, and they'll vary in size and square footage, but basically the drive-up, garage door, storage unit.
So the budget rent-a-truck place, the cruise RV America place, and the repair shop in the back would all be gone.
Correct. It would just be self-storage and then the office space for the self-storage rental.
What is that currently now? It was a house out toward the street. Is that,
I think it's an office for,
it's already an office or something.
His office there for the budget rent.
Well, the office for the storage is in, I remember when I went to rent an RV, the office was kind of inside the site there.
yeah, so the northernmost building that we're proposing, it's kind of it's kind of parallel to the city line. That is about where the office is right now.
Okay.
And then, so that would be storage. And then there's a grade change. The westernmost proposed building would be a 2-story because of the grade change, I think it would be doable. You could drive up to the lower story, lower half of the building on the one side and then the higher half on the other. So those units would be probably longer and narrower.
So with that, yeah, the one unit there, you're keeping the existing unit
Yes.
back there.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah,
So
show up on that.
this one?
Yeah, right. So that's the existing one.
So yeah, so there's no changes proposed to that.
Why the different shapes in the storage units? Just to cover more ground?
The intent was to max it out and get as much storage as possible. So because of the setbacks, what we're showing now are 50-foot yard setbacks. And I'm not entirely sure why that shape building is the way it is.
Would there be different storage items in each or something like that? Is that what they're thinking, or?
Well, there'll be different configurations of square footage. They were toying with potential RV and boat storage,
Oh, okay.
which would go underneath a canopy. Not necessarily be indoors, but they are actually considering the potential of donating the city parcel. I guess it would be to the county, because the county owns, that's a rail trail on the south side, as a potential park space.
Yep.
And did you say earlier that this would actually decrease the impervious square footage?
Like I said, I'm not entirely sure. We need the survey, but it's not going to be much of a change in either direction.
Okay.
Two questions. One is, did you, it's zoned IH, and I don't offhand recall the setback, the structure, the building setbacks from the property line. Does that westernmost storage unit meet setback?
Well, okay, so
Well, that's already existing, right?
the westernmost is not.
The one closest to the, I think it's the one you meant would be two-level, the one closest to Route 9G.
Right,
That's parallel to Route 9G.
So,
Does that meets the IH setback?
well, here's the thing. The IH setback is 50 feet, and I believe it does meet that, but
Right, the residential is a separate determination, correct?
which across the street is residential.
Yeah, we'd have to figure that out.
So that's a 150-foot setback to a building.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and just again, curiosity, I'm sure you played around with cardboard and cutouts, figuring out what made the most sense, but did you look at that line that buildings up more parallel to the city line to see if you might get, longer buildings that would preserve access, but maybe get more space?
I think we did play with the configuration a couple times. We maintain the 50-foot setback along the city line too. And again, I don't know if I think I talked to you about it, if there's a municipal setback, but this layout provided the most square footage as far as storage goes, based on those setbacks, the 50-foot yard setbacks.
And what was the reason for retaining the area behind the L-shaped building, closer to the municipal boundary? It's an L-shaped building with a big area behind it.
So you have the property line in the middle and the property line on the south. So the 50-foot setback, I don't know, Eric, I don't know. I'm not sure. I was thinking, but we would eliminate the property line in the middle anyway, so there wouldn't be a setback. The rear yard setback would explain why it was cut short. But I'm not sure.
Just trying to make the drive aisles even, or?
Yeah, I think that's probably what it was. And minimize the amount of impervious so that it wasn't driving around the entire building.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it backs up to the rail trail and the golf cart. I mean, this is a discussion, everybody, so just chime in with anything you have. Is that Superior Walls to the north? Or is it a different, I can't remember what that.
No, Superior Walls is further north.
Further north, okay.
I think that's, those are houses. There's actually 2 residential parcels there.
There is, okay, in between.
And essentially they would maintain as the office is a house, but I think it's being used for commercial purposes now.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't the VFW right across the street?
The VFW is across the street, yeah.
Yeah, on an angle there. And a new, there's a planned senior community there. as
In the
well.
VFW?
North of the VFW, adjacent to the VFW.
Oh, okay.
Planned senior apartment complex.
Putting in the ice cream place. Putting in the ice cream place next to the VFW, right?
And the ice cream place is new as well.
Yeah, that old building, trying to fix it up.
I guess that'd be my concern for what residential remains there. But overall, it would clean it up. Thank you.
I mean, I don't think that comes to my mind, and it's not something that you have any control over necessarily, but, you know, with the trail and everything there, it seems almost like at some point in the future, maybe there could be something more than a self-storage facility at this location, you know, but it is zoned industrial, and I know that the owner, this is what they do now and what they would want to do in the future, but it's not the most creative idea. I guess there's a demand for self-storage.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
They keep being built.
There's a significant grade change from where the rail trail is to where the storage units are. So if you're on the rail trail, I don't know how visible the storage units would be.
I mean, you're going underneath the, it's wooded on both sides, and you're going underneath that overpass there, under Parker Avenue. I mean, along similar lines, I thought with new senior apartments across the street, something that would be amenable to them along the street, like a restaurant or something.
Are you going to, would the self-storage
probably
also
have-
include storage of RVs, fifth wheels, boat, you know, large boats, trailers?
Yeah, she just said boats before.
Yeah, they're playing with, they're open to that idea, but it would probably just be under a canopy. So not internal.
Okay.
So would it be a canopy in addition to what's depicted here as buildings, or would one of the buildings end up being a canopy space, if you know?
It would.
You could fit, right, a canopy space in addition to what's depicted here?
Right, and I think that the town's code considers a canopy a structure, so it's subject to the yard setbacks as well, so it would be in lieu of one of these buildings.
And any existing concrete that's there or paving, would that be coming up if it wouldn't be being used as part of this new development?
Yeah, we would eliminate any impervious we didn't need.
Although it looks like most of it will be used.
well, no, there's a whole area on the south portion of the site, including on the city parcel. Would all that pavement be coming up?
Yeah. Especially
Okay.
if they're gonna donate it to the county at green space. They don't know how viable that section of the property is.
Right.
But yeah, they would restore it back to,
So you're planning to work with the city anyway and see what, or they don't, or their code zoning for that piece is.
from my initial look at their zoning code, it looks like you need to build a 20,000 square foot building for it to be legal on that site.
Huh.
I have to dig a little deeper, but, which would fit there, but I don't know. They're open to suggestion, the client is, so nothing's off the table at this point.
Just check with Arlington, I guess, is this Arlington Fire?
That'd be Fairview, probably.
Fairview? Just check if they have any, you might anticipate any comments for access they might want or need in between the buildings. Also with respect to parking. Because sometimes I've concerns about parking access and fire.
Getting past the parked car?
Yeah.
Yep.
So would you be putting a locked passcode gate then, right in front? or-
What?
Would you, a passcode gate, would you be putting in front? Or,
Yeah, it would be gated. So, and the rental office would have normal hours, but then if you needed to get to your storage unit.
I think we all get a little punchy.
not quite as long as a month, but thanks for hanging in there.
You have a site that's zoned industrial, you have a use that's already permitted. Probably might want the site to be spruced up, no pun
Definitely.
intended. Otherwise, you have some cookie cutting to do. But I mean, if you want to come back, I certainly think that it's something that, is doable.
Okay.
I mean, you never know, people downsizing to the senior apartments there might need a place to store some stuff, so.
It's perfect. Procedurally, though, how does that work if we have to go to the zoning? Do we get deferred to the zoning board by the planning board? Or do we just go?
What would probably happen is you'd submit your plans, and then the zoning administrator would do her review and would determine whether you needed variances. At that point, we could decide whether it made sense to do them concurrently and have, either an uncoordinated review or a coordinated review, depending on how many variances you need and how intense they were.
Okay.
So.
Just sounds like you need quite a few on a setback, so.
Yeah, there's a setback issue, potentially.
But it's industrial, a golf course, and a couple of residentials, I guess. All right, anybody else have further comments? Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Couple more cleanup items. New Stratford Farm Townhouses, time extension of Finer Major subdivision approval of the site plan approved for 26 individual townhouse lots, a common area lot and site improvements on a 6.832 acre parent lot within a previously approved 185 lot subdivision, Stratford Drive, zoned R4A, residence, single family, 4 acre, district 6.832 acres. Seeker negative declaration is on file, ABD Stratford LLC owner. I move that the planning board grant 2 90-day time extensions of site plan approval and final major subdivision approval from January 28th, 2019 forward to July 27th, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 5-0. Stratford Farms Water Booster Station, time extension for an approved site plan for a 293 square foot single-story water pressure booster. Lot 11, Stratford Drive, zoned R4A, residential, single-family, 4 acres, district, 1.896 acres. Seeker negative declaration adopted December 14th, 2006. ABD Stratford LLC owner. I move that the planning board grant a 12-month time extension from February 15th, 2019 forward to February 15th, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 5-0. Beacon Residential, 297 Violent Avenue, time extension for a previously approved site plan to construct a new 2-story residence of 4 units, 297 Violet Avenue, zoned RM Residence Multifamily District, 0.445 acres. Conditional site plan approval was granted September 14th, 2017. Beacon Residential LLC owner. I move that the planning board grant a second 90-day extension of conditional site plan approval from December 13th, 2018 forward to March 13th, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, did I hear opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Doing it quick.
I move that we terminate this meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded, terminate the meeting, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No opposition. Motion passes 5-0.